Chapter 4422. Insufferable. Yu Ding Supreme heard that his face sank and said coldly, Jian Wushuang, since you are so lacking in discipline, this seat will give you the elders of the Temple of Life to discipline you. Ha! With a wave of his right hand, the duster in his hand turned into a magic pen, and stroked in the void in front of him, directly drawing a pattern of Jin Changqian's Yin and Yang Tai Chi mysterious seal. Yu Ding uttered a low sigh, turned the dust brush in his hand into a heavy brush, and cast a heavy weight on this Yin and Yang Tai Chi pattern. Suddenly, this Yin and Yang Tai Chi moan uttered a low groan, which sprang up into the air, and then continuously zoomed in, rising in the wind, and in just a few breaths, it was like a cloth curtain covering the entire sky, all blocked. After doing all this, Yu Ding Supreme stepped on his feet and flew up, turning the dust in his hand into a giant axe, and splitting down towards the sword Wushuang. Talents, primitive universe. Jian Wu's eyes captured the hunting and hunting warfare, directly turning on the talented supernatural powers. Instantly, a strong force came to the world, turning the surrounding void into a dark magnetic field. Boom! Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's breath soared again, and the movement of Yu Ding Supreme's flying split could not help but stagnate. It is this stagnation, Jian Wushuang said coldly. Chopper star! Boom! Sun Lan Jianmong condensed in the hands of the sword, and split it instantly with a strong sword pressure, and the starry sky was split directly, as if passing by the sea. Oh! Yu Ding squinted his eyes narrowly, and then sneered. What a surprise, but unfortunately, it didn't work for me. Qian Jifu change. He drank aloud, and in a flash, his hand turned into a duster of a giant axe, and the white wires suddenly spread out, like a girl's loose flower, making a clicking noise, and the next breath, these white wires merged and turned into a prismatic shield will protect Yu Ding Supreme. Ha! The star-slicing sword slashed on the shield, and suddenly made a loud noise shaking the mountain, as if the whole universe directly caused a 10,000 magnitude earthquake, a force of shock, flying along the shield, spreading to all directions. Rewind. The fight between these two men is terrifying. In a short time, among the people who watched the battle, those who did not reach the highest level of supremacy were violently retreating backwards and backwards, slamming their sleeves to withstand the violent shock waves. The Yu Ding Supreme has already stepped after blocking the star-cut Jianmong, like a tide of smoke, rolling towards the sword Wushuang. Come! In the eyes of the sword Wushan, the mansion skyrocketed, and the Tai Luo divine sword swept across the 99 swords, tearing the sky, arrogant sky, and killing Yu Ding Supreme. Ha! The two instantly fought with more than 100 moves, one with sharp swords, the other with magical powers that destroyed the world, and the whole universe seemed to be destroyed, and one black void after another was exploded. The speed of both of them was extremely fast, and even the crowd of the audience had already worked hard to capture the movements of the two with their eyes. I saw that the sword with no hands in the sword continued to chop and stab, and the sword shadows overlapped, like a dream, giving a very beautiful feeling. And the dust brush in the hand of Yu Ding Supreme is ever-changing, once transformed into a long knife to tear the sky, once transformed into a giant axe to open the world, and once transformed into a spear to sweep the world. The two keep moving, from this star to another star, just like the two divine powers that cross each other. The collisions that occur again and again produce the surrounding stars into powder, as if to reopen chaos and make the universe boil. The blood of countless tyrants fell along this wound, and continuously burned black holes in the void, burning a burst of white smoke, and permeating Jian Wushuang's body. Dairy. Yu Ding Supreme's complexion changed slightly, and he looked a little displeased to the Emperor of the Sun. He used to deal with the sword unparalleled, even if he bullied the small, but the Emperor of the Sun still attacked. If it spreads, wouldn't his reputation be ruined? I want to talk with more like-minded people to Sword Master Wandao. WeChat pays attention to reading literature, to read novels, talk about life, find friends. Chapter 4423. Extreme Muting. It'll be foolproof until I kill this little thief together. I promise to double your benefits later, okay? Emperor Derry said with a smile. After hearing this, Yuding Supreme found his face a little slower, and shook his head and said, "The sword is unparalleled now, but it is the end of a powerful crossbow. It is no longer a threat. He can't live today." The words of the crickets fell. Yuding's expression was indifferent, and he walked step by step towards the sword unparalleled, ready to cast his final killing blow. The Emperor Dari and the Emperor Haoji walked on both sides, his eyes filled with murder, and the corners of his mouth evoked a sneer of pleasure. The three of them joined together and approached Jinshuang quickly. In the distance, everyone watching the scene saw this scene, and his face suddenly changed. "It's really shameless. Jian Wushuang is just a junior supreme. Why even join hands? This great Emperor of the Sun is also the leader of one side of the power, the top and supreme. I can't think of it so unbearably, and the front is defeated by Jian Wushuang. So I sneak attack while taking advantage of the swords. It seems that the great Emperor of the Sun has already hated the sword unparalleled hatred, and has done everything." Someone said scornfully. There are others who sighed and shook their heads. It's no wonder that the big day, since Jian Wushuang decided to come and settle in the big kingdom of the big day, this scene should be thought of. It's just a pity that Jian Wushuang is in such a vertical position that it should be the treasure of my universe. But it will fall here unexpectedly. Jian Wushuang is too arrogant and too arrogant. If I were him, I would hide in the dark, wait until the ceremony of the ancestors passed, all the guests left, and then find a chance to slowly map it. It's just a pity that sword is unparalleled, and chose one of the most arrogant and high profile, and the easiest way to gather fire. Everyone whispered and talked differently, but in general, almost all of them were unworthy of swords. Crackling, each step of the Emperor Tairi fell into the void with a muffled sound, as if a dying approaching, proclaiming the death of sword unparalleled. Sword unparalleled. Aren't you the first genius in the universe? Aren't you going to settle down my kingdom of the great God of God? Let's take another look at it. The Emperor Prince Haoji said with a smile on the corner of his mouth, and said ironically. But Yuding Supreme said with a blank expression, "Jian Wushuang, I admit that you are strong, but unfortunately, you have chosen the wrong opponent and should not be your enemy." In the eyes of the three men, all of them emit different light, or indifferent. They are confident that under the joint of the three, Jian Wushuang is undoubtedly dead. The smoky waves of the sky gradually dispersed. The three of them are distanced from Jian Wushuang, but they are 10 feet away. Then, at this moment, a quiet voice sounded from the smoke waves that had not completely dispersed. "I didn't want to use this sword. I intend to leave it to Bingyu. But why? Why do you have to die? Huh?" The next moment, the smoky waves of the sky suddenly shattered, revealing the indifferent figure of Jian Wushuang. The blood hole blasted out by the Emperor Dari in his chest has been restored, exuding bright golden light, as if the perfect body of the of heaven. With his hands in his hands, the eyes of the Taro Excalibur's hilt were spreading wide. A huge surge of sword pressure was released from the Taro Excalibur. Sword unparalleled. Suddenly, the three of Yuding Supreme stepped together, and their pupils shrank. I do not know why. They felt a breath of enthusiasm on Jian Wushuang. Wu Jian Wushuang's expression was indifferent. He ignored them, but looked up at woody starry sky, then closed his eyes slowly, and said silently, "Third sword of Terra Dusk." Alas, there was a wind between heaven and earth. The sword has no Taro sword in both hands. Starting from the point of the sword, it becomes sandy and disappears gradually. The whole world falling into stillness. The stars that were originally suspended in the universe seemed to have lost their gravity and began to fall, as if they were about to fall into an abyss. What is this? The Emperor Dari and the Emperor Haoji noticed anomalies and frowned, a feeling of palpitations constantly amplifying in their hearts. I just know that no matter how they release their magic power to spread around, they can't feel where this feeling of consciousness came from. I only know that it must be related to sword warriors. And Yuding Supreme. It is an instant change of face. The Emperor Dari and the Emperor Haoji did not know what was going on. But how could he not know who had witnessed Taro Supreme dominating the universe in person? This is simply one of the 5 unique skills that Tai Luo Supreme dominated the universe. Kendo Magical Power Dusk. At that time, Tai Luo Supreme used the evening sword to slaughter 3 major races with one sword, making the universe horrified. Originally, with the fall of Tai Luo Supreme, the sword-like magical power of this terrible crying ghost was also sealed. I didn't expect it to be opened again by Jian Wushuang today. Escape! Su Yuding's eyes widened, and he burst into a drink at the Emperor of the Sun and the Emperor Haoji. At the same time, he stepped his right foot, and the dust in his hand instantly turned into a shuttle, allowing him to step under the foot and fly away. The speed was extremely fast. What? The brief encounter between the Emperor Dari and the Emperor Haoji was immediately understood in his heart, and it must be that the Supreme Master Yuding noticed the existence of danger. And this was the case. As a result, the two of them also performed magical powers and wanted to escape. Late. Wu Jianwushuang slowly opened his eyes. Under his feet, the void slowly sunk in, forming a giant pit, and then began to spread out at a very fast speed. Rumble. This pit is like a giant beast with a wide open mouth. A suction that can't be resisted is transmitted from the center of this pit. Countless stars, countless galaxies, everything suspended in the universe have lost control, fell into this crater, and died silently. The night will be replaced by the dawn, and the sun will fall into the arms of the night. The middle process is dusk. I have already shot 1,000 miles away from the great Emperor of the Sun to see this scene, and suddenly the scalp became numb, and his liver and gallbladder were cold. Next moment, stopping his original sprinting motion, the huge suction from the pit that wiped out everything in the world is like an invisible arm, dragging him back. He obviously still keeps sprinting forward, but the whole person keeps retreating and then falling, until it fell into the entire pit. It wasn't just him, but also Prince Haoji, who watched the war a little closer, fell into one after another. It's not over yet, including the Yuding Supreme who first reacted, and the farthest flew away, was also dragged back and fell into the pit in the unwilling roar. No, sword warriors, I will not intervene in this matter. You let me go. When Sun was about to fall into the pit, Yuding Supreme stared at Jian Wushuang and said, "Late." Wu Jianshou shook his head. His eyebrows were cold. Then his lips opened slightly, and he spit out a word. Buried. Chapter 44-24. Burial. The sword with no pair of feet is empty, with both hands quickly stamping, coldly drinking. When this sentence fell, the pit, like a black hole in the desert, began to collapse quickly. Reaching the point where Jian Wushuang is now, Kendo magical power is no longer tied to swordplay. In the universe, a loud noise was heard. First, the stars that were swallowed into the pit began to smash and annihilate one by one, turning them into nothingness, and then the weakest Prince Haoji was squeezed by heaven and earth, and the body collapsed and shattered instantly. "My father saves me!" Shouting in horror, Prince Haoji shouted. "Ha!" On the verge of death, the Prince Haoji was extinct in form and spirit, leaving only his tragic sounds, echoing in the universe. "Haoji, my son." For a moment, the Emperor of the Great Sun was about to crack, and his eyes opened. After the Emperor Shao was beheaded and killed by Jian Wushuang in the ancient road of the sky, the Emperor Haoji was the last effort of the Emperor Dari, and he was the heir to the Emperor. Even if there is no such thing as Jian Wushuang, the Emperor of the Sun is ready to launch the Emperor Haoji as the Emperor at the ceremony. His love for Haoji, even less Emperor. Now in the presence of his Prince Haoji died in the hands of Jian Wushuang. The last words of help of Prince Haoji, like a sharp knife, poked into his heart. He is an emperor, he is the top and supreme, he is in the universe, and is in charge of thousands of life and death. But he is even more a father. At this moment, the Emperor Haoji dies in front of him, and the Emperor of the Sun is crazy. Sword unparalleled, Yuet. The Emperor Dari raised his head, and through the huge pit, he looked at Xiang Jinshuang, and the resentment in his eyes condensed to the extreme. "It looks like you're in pain?" Ji Jian looked at him with no expression on both sides, and a corner of indifference radiated from the corner of his mouth. "Don't worry, You will be reunited with your son soon. Ha! The collapse speed of the pits has become faster. There is a devastating force formed by sword gas, which is constantly harvesting vitality in the pit. Evening twilight, everything withered. I have fallen into this night forever. This is the true meaning of the evening sword move. Howling. Howling. The Emperor Dari is running supreme divine power, resisting the offensive brought by the evening sword move, and roaring constantly. I was stunned by him, and it was like a raging atmosphere. It was quickly annihilating, and it was also expensive to be the top 10 universe gods, constantly opening cracks and leaking air. 10 breaths passed. The body of the Emperor Dari finally began to explode inch by inch, and in the end only one skull remained, staring at the sword unparalleled. Sword unparalleled, you must not die of the king's curse. You go to Huangquan as you go up and down. My king curses you. Ah! He did not wait for him to finish, and the head of the Emperor Dari exploded like a cracked watermelon. The vitality belonging to the Emperor of the Great Sun disappeared. At this moment, there was still a rumbling boom in the pit, but everyone watching the battle in the distance seemed to be deaf. Looking at this scene blankly, his mouth could be stuffed with an egg. It wasn't long before someone trembled with his lips. Big. Great Sun Emperor. How did a generation of magpies fall like this? Big Sun Emperor. But in the universe, the little one who stood at the peak died like this in a sword without hands. The Emperor Shao died, the Emperor Haoji died, and the Emperor Dari died. I'm afraid that in the future, there will be no place in the universe for the great D-God kingdom. It's terrible. How strong is Jian Wushuang? Countless people said in shock. They turned to look at Jian Wushuang, with only deep awe in their eyes. Huh. Evening sword moves did not end, but continued. Because there is one person who is still supporting. That is Yuding Supreme. Inside the pit, a blast of destruction slammed into Yuding Supreme. While Yuding Supreme sat cross-legged in the void, the dusting silver wire in his hand spread rapidly, and then grew like an eggshell, and wrapped Yuding Supreme in it. No matter how violent bombing of the sword energy at dusk, he stood still. Jian Wushuang, this move is really powerful, but unfortunately, it is still the same sentence. You have done too much for me, and you cannot use the combat power that this move deserves, otherwise one face-to-face will be beheaded. Qi Yuding shook his head with pity, and then shook his head, then said, Sword unparalleled. Now that the great Emperor of the Sun is dead, and your resentment has been reported, why not let this seat go out? Is it possible that you have been consuming here with this seat all the time? When Sun said here, the corner of Yuding Supreme's mouth evoked a slight meaning. There is no expression on both sides of the sword, and I have to say that this Yuding Supreme is really powerful. Even at dusk he can't completely kill it. I was silent for a while. Jian Wushuang said, Yuding, do you remember what I said before? Okay. After hearing the words, Yuding Supreme squinted his eyes and asked, What is it? Wu Jianshou glanced at him lightly, and calmly replied, I once said that if you block me, I will kill you. Do you think I'm joking with you? Boom. Suddenly, the deep pit that killed countless lives disappeared. Taro sword, reunited in the sword without hands. However, before waiting for Yuding Supreme's face to burst into joy, he was suddenly replaced by an unprecedented panic. Terra Sword Code 4th Style for Seasons. Wu Jian stared coldly at Yuding Supreme, and Moran opened his mouth. In a short time, the entire universe regenerates and changes. The entire star air temperature suddenly dropped by thousands of degrees. It is in all directions blowing strong cold snow and icy miles of stars. For a moment, the world seemed to be in the middle of a cold winter. Countless snowflakes exuded a bitter coldness, falling from the air. Each snowflake is a season of sword spirit. This is the 4-season swordsmanship. Suddenly, Yuding Supreme was terrified. If Jian Wushuang used the dusk sword move before, he was just shocked. Now he is scared. 4-season sword moves, seemingly unremarkable, far from the momentum of the first 3 swords. But no matter in terms of intention or power, it is far from being comparable to the first 3 swords. It can be said that from the beginning of the 4-season sword move, it is a huge watershed. The 4-season swordsmanship is like a needle hidden in cotton. Huh. Chapter 44:25. Boom! A spring thunder blew. The four seasons sword moves suddenly regenerate and change, cold winter melts, and turns into a warm spring silent. Alas! The icy snow and cold snow gradually faded away, and what turned to be was a drizzle of drizzle falling from the air. Long winter, warm spring, hot summer, cold autumn. The four major solar terms are the four sword meanings implied in the four seasons swordsmanship. It's obscure and complicated, it's profound and profound, far beyond anyone's imagination. Yuanquan is not the sword of the four seasons swordsmanship, but it is the most dangerous sword. Hunshan's solar terms, all things recover, beneath the peaceful surface, cruel killing and plundering are hidden. Rumble. In the universe. At this moment it seems that the entire starry sky has disappeared. There are continuous spring rains falling and spring thunder roaring constantly, as if playing a song of destruction. Sun Yuding held the whisk in his hand and stared at the world around him. The rain falling in the sky is sword air, and the thunderous thunder is sword air. Even the gentle wind that blows is sword air. Sword after sword dense, filling the world. Avoidance is inevitable, ambush on all sides. For just half a column of incense, the Yuding supreme deity was severed by countless sword chi, and a blood rain fell like a blood man. His hair was loose, his robe was thin, and the wolf was trembling to the extreme. Sword unparalleled. Do you really want to endure with this seat? Su Yuding looked at the footsteps to the void, like the sword master of the heaven and earth cold voice. Wu Jianshou glanced at him lightly and replied, "If you can survive this sword, how can I spare you my life?" Okay, Jian Wushuang, this is the reason you were not afraid of this seat before, right? But you must forget that not only you in the world have a killer, but this jade also has it. Qi Yuding took a deep breath, and there was no slight contempt in his eyes, and he turned into an incomparable dignity. Next moment, speak him word by word. Supreme God, Yuding Township. Break me. Suddenly, Yuding's supreme body was flowing, and countless avenues of truth evolved in his eyes. He had a very strong breath, soaring again and again. In the void, 9 giant tripods are suddenly gathered. These 9 giant tripods are quaint and magnificent. As soon as Fang appears, it is like a Dinghai god who suppresses the sea of anger, continuously puffing the cold mang, turned into the sword chi eroded by the spring rain. At the same time collapsed a whole 100,000. This supernatural power is the most powerful extinction of Yuding Supreme that relies on the universe. He once used this supernatural power to make a half-step invincible Supreme and instantly kill. The name of his Supreme Jade Tripod comes from this magical power. Click. The void seems to be unable to bear these 9 giant tripods, crushed inch by inch. Burning. Qi Yuding Supreme exhausted his whole body's strength and sang. Suddenly, these 9 giant tripods were like Xingyuan Shenlong, dripping and spinning, soaring into the sky. These 9 giant tripods are linked to each other, and the tripod within the tripod continues to muffle, as if the drums of war in the ancient heavens were beaten, making people deaf. Boom! The next breath, 9 giant tripods exploded at the same time. A majestic force that could not be described with any force was blown away, turned into a shock wave that destroyed the world, and swept the quartet. Under this force, whether it is the continuous spring rain, or the spring wind that stirs up or down, or the spring thunder that thunders, crush all at the same time. Good skill. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed, half a step back. His fists were all pulled out. His fist photographed the bright golden light, and the purple Sichuan word in the eyebrow was even more dazzling. Come. Jian Wushuang's fists were smashed out fiercely, and the shock wave that swept at him continued to crash. Huh. Every punch is sinking to the extreme with great power to hit the planet. Wu Jian Wushuang is like a warrior on the coast to meet the tide. No matter how this shock wave slaps, he will break it one by one. And the 4 seasons sword spirit destroyed by Yuding Supreme did not dissipate with it, but began to evolve again. Winter to spring, spring to summer, summer to autumn, autumn to winter. For solar terms endless and cycle each other. Once the 4 seasons of sword chi are generated, it will be to the death. This is also the strongest point of the 4 seasons sword energy. It is not like dawn and dusk, it will explode all attack powers at the same time, causing a devastating blow. It is like a grinding disc, which moves slowly, but constantly destroys the vitality of the enemy. After a few breaths, a round of scorching sun rises, and a scorching and violent force rushes towards the face. The entire starry sky began to become red. Yu Ding was supreme, and the whole body began to ignite white smoke, just like withered flowers and bones. The skin gradually became dry and dull, and his hair fell down. The whole person, as if to be roasted and dried, the blood began to boil, and then smoked. A big terror between life and death, madness breeds in his heart. Sword unparalleled, stop. I confess to you wrong. I shouldn't get involved in your affairs with the Emperor of the Sun. Let me go. From now on, wherever your sword is unparalleled, my Yu Ding retreats and respects you as a god. Let me go. At this moment, all the pride and dignity of Yu Ding Supreme is shattered, leaving only the fear of death and the desire for survival. He looked at Jian Wushuang in despair, his face full of begging. Want to ask for mercy now? Jian Wushuang glanced at him lightly and shook his head. I'm sorry. My sword Wushuang has always reported this to me. If you want my life, I will kill it. Dead. The next moment, Jian Wushuang stretched out 5 fingers forward towards the void and grabbed it fiercely. Ha! Suddenly, the scorching sun, which was transformed into a sword by the 4 seasons, burst into flames and crashed into Yu Ding Supreme. Instantly Yu Ding's supreme face is earthy and pale. In a blast of earth-shattering thunder, the Tai Luo Excalibur was severely inserted into the chest of Yu Ding Supreme. Immediately, Yu Ding Supreme disappeared. Half-step invincible Supreme Yu Ding fall. Hit him. He is the highest person who died in the sword without hands. Ha! This 4-season world evolved from the Terra Excalibur gradually collapsed. The Terra Excalibur turned into a golden light, flew back, shot into the sword without hands, and was held by the sword. The whole starry sky turned into a dead silence. Chapter 44-26. In the void there was silence. Only the strong wind kept echoing. I have retreated to the distant spectators, watching this scene blankly, only to feel cold all over the body. The Prince Hao Ji died. The Emperor Dari died. Even in the universe, Yu Ding Supreme, who is half-step invincible Supreme Master, is also buried in the hands of Jian Wushuang. He could not use any words to describe the terror in their hearts. Originally, Jian Wushuang once dominated and killed the Supreme. It was shocking enough, but now Jian Wushuang has begun the Supreme practice and beheaded and defeated. This is too shocking. In the universe, these things have never happened before. Whether it's the first day of the 100,000 chaos before the chaos era, or the 9 calamity kings, who were also considered to be wicked Tianjiao before, it is far less than the current sword unparalleled, 1,000 miles away. The universe seems to be really changing. The beginner Supreme cuts and kills the half-step invincible Supreme. If I hadn't seen it myself, I wouldn't believe it. The first day of eternity is proud. Countless years from now, the entire universe will remember a name. That is Swordsman. Legend. Jian Wushuang is a legend. From today onwards, there will be one more person on the top of the universe, and that is swordless. Invincible Supreme is not out. I'm afraid Jian Wushuang is enough to sweep the universe. Countless people spoke. At this moment, they looked at Jian Wushuang, who had black hair in the distance, and their eyes filled with strong worship and fanaticism. I even have a monk dazzled and venomous. If it had not been rumored in the universe, Jian Wushuang had already married, and I was anxious to rush up on the spot and make a wife for Jian Wushuang. No one who is present will be a fool. Jian Wushuang is powerful and amazingly talented. No one dared to say how amazing Giant Shuang's future achievements will be. If it wasn't for the existence of the dragon race, Diwu Temple, etc., which are hostile to Jian Wushuang, I don't know how many people in the universe want to go online with Jian Wushuang and form a good destiny. Now, after Jian Wushuang slashed half-step invincible Supreme Yu Ding, these people are suddenly brave, no more scruples. Well, swords have been practiced for more than 700,000 years without both sides, and they have the power to slay half-step invincible supremacy. If sword warriors are practiced for more than 700,000 years, this dragon may not be their opponents. The dragons have been comfortable for too long, and they think they are too long. It is time for people to teach them. They are not the masters of the universe. The dragons are powerful, but they are nothing more than that. A few surviving second-generation dragons can only rest on their lives. Although the remaining 3 generations of dragons are strong, they may not have the opportunity to lift them until the swordsman Wuxian has fully grown up. Turn. I am convinced that after 10,000 chaos ages, this universe will belong to swordless. Countless people's eyes were burning, and their tone was firm. Immediately, they looked at each other and walked towards Jian Wushuang, planning to form a good destiny. Among them, the guests who came to participate in the ceremony of the ancestral ritual of the Emperor of the Sun were running fast, fearing that Jian Wushuang would be angry at them, and he had to explain it quickly. Wushuang Supreme, the supreme promise of the golden sword of the promise, I would like to say hello. Wushuang Supreme, the owner of the island of Xiaoweo, hereby apologizes to you for paying tribute. It is really my ancestor who has an old age with him. For a moment, all kinds of sounds to please Jian Wushuang sounded one after another. These people, without exception, are all middle level or above. However, at the moment, they are facing various swordsman flatterers, and they are not afraid of being disrespectful. If this scene falls in the eyes of an unsuspecting person, it will definitely make people downcast. Jian Wushuang's expression was dull. These people were just the grass on both sides of the wind. It is the best to see the wind to make the rudder. Fortunately, today they have won. If they lose, these people will definitely be cut by Yuding Supreme and others. After killing Spit and Spit, he didn't bother them too much. Jian Wushuang took a right-handed shot into the void, and suddenly the great Emperor of the Sun and Yuding's supreme Qianquan ring shot at him. After grabbing the Qianquan ring, Jian Wushuang's divine power swept slightly inside, and his expression couldn't help moving. The wealth of these 2 men is really scary, even when the supreme thunder has not yet begun, and when many of his treasures have not yet exploded. They are far worse than these 2. These 2 people are afraid of relying on their own cultivation to become strong, and others a lot of opportunities. Wu Jinsho snorted coldly, then shook his head immediately, closed the 2 Qianquan, and turned towards the great sun god kingdom. Ha! The sword warrior turned into a sword across the sky suddenly, like a meteor passing, and fell into the country of the great god of the sun. Day City King. Many people who did not rush out of the starry sky to watch, and the royal children who stayed behind in the great sun god kingdom, are discussing with each other. They have a relaxed face, a relaxed attitude, and even a leisurely cup of tea. It seems that they have no fear of losing the Emperor Dari and others. Queen, His Majesty the Emperor, they haven't returned for so long, won't it happen? A guard of the great sun god kingdom said with some anxiety in his eyes. The queen was a beautiful woman, and when she heard that she put down her teacup, she said arbitrarily, Jian Wushuang's thief is only an elementary supreme cultivation. How can he be your majesty's opponent? Not to mention this time, there is Yuding Supreme to assist. If Ren Jianshou has the ability to pass through the sky, he will bow down this time. This. The guard couldn't help hesitating and said, Queen, for the sake of insurance, I think we should go and see. When Queen Dei heard her words frown, she was about to rebuke. At this time, with a loud bang, a low voice exploded like a thunder and rolled down. The Emperor Dari is dead, and other people of the Dari royal family are also guilty. Although they will not die, they should be cut and cultivated to serve the purpose. Ha! The figure of Wu Jian's unparalleled united in the void. Instantly, countless children of the family of the king of the big sun god split their hearts, and couldn't believe it. The queen of the big sun was overwhelmed in an instant. How can it be? How could your majesty be defeated? Wu Jian's expression was indifferent, his black hair fluttered, and he stood proudly in the void. He glanced down at Dei King City, and immediately shook his head, splitting it with a sword. This sword deprives you of cultivation. Boom! Suddenly, the sword was split, and it seemed to cause no harm, not even a single tree or a tree. but it was directly in the invisible, and it was chopped on everyone who was in blood with the Emperor of the Sun. This sword is a variant of Yongye sword. He has the power to deprive everything. Xinai is a little magical power that Jian Wushuang promoted after he realized the sword intention of Taro Supreme. Ah, my cultivation. What's going on? Why is my cultivation fading? No. For a moment, the Japanese palace was screaming again and again. Countless people feel their fast-removing cultivation, and their faces are terrified. Those who came with the sword unparalleled noticed this scene, even more shocked, cold all over. Ijian cut to repair. What kind of ghost and means? The De royal family has a total of nearly 10,000 people. Wu Ji and Wusu looked at them lightly and split the 4 swords again. These 4 swords rise into the sky and then hide in the void. From today to the next 90 million years, all people of the royal family of Derry shall not step out of the palace of Derry. Dalian Imperial Palace, closed for thousands of years. The 4 sword-ons hidden in the void, the sword tip turned, and will kill anyone who dares to step out of the big Japanese palace. Instantly, countless people of the De royal family looked desperate, as pale as earth. Wu Jianwushuang said no more. As soon as he stepped, he turned into a ray of light. Chapter 44:27. Jian Wushuang left. He left only a messy great sun god kingdom, and countless disciples of the great sun emperor. When he entered the city was full of joy and everyone smiled. After he was out of the city, the ruins of the wall were broken, and a piece of white clothing was ravaged. At this moment, countless monks who are still staying in the De King city, watching the De King family, who was sealed by the 4 swordsmen, suppressed their hearts for a while. They know that the great sun god kingdom is over. 90 million years. For a total of 90 million years, you must not step out of the palace. What is this concept? For the supreme supremacy of Gongshan, although 90 million years is long, but it is not unacceptable. But for the children of the Dane royal family, who have been deprived and degraded to mortals, 90 million years are countless. Reincarnation, thousands of generations. This represents them. They must never stand up forever. Do not. Countless children of the royal family of Derry Kingdom, in Derry Imperial Palace, all showed despair. And the Queen of Derry fainted to the ground instantly. After a high king, I ordered the world not to dare not, and to become a mortal who is going to experience old age, sickness and death, which is even more painful than killing her. Among them, the children of the Dane royal family who are fortunate to try to practice, are shocked to find that a prohibition has been planted in their bodies, blocking all their paths of practice. It's really over. At this moment, countless people fell to the ground, looking desperate and desperate. A few days later, Wu Shou Wushuang in the great sun goddess country, cutting the great sun god emperor, the most supreme thing in Yuding, spread throughout the universe at a very fast speed. In a hurry, there was an uproar in the universe, with thousands of people shaking and the world sensation. The sensation caused this time is far more than anything in the past, even enough to compare the war at the gate of the Temple of Life. The Emperor Derry died in the sword without hands. It was nothing. Although they were surprised, they had not reached the point of horror. The impact of Zhu Yuding's extreme fall is too big. Sun Yuding is supreme, half-step invincible supreme cultivation, famous in thousands of prehistoric times, who survived the war of catastrophe. Of course, at the time of the Holocaust, Yuding Supreme was still weak, but the Supreme did not officially participate in the Holocaust. But Rao is so, he is also an ancient power. It is such a powerful hand and eye that has died in the swordless hands, that have practiced for more than 700,000 years. This is really shocking. Sword unparalleled gifted strength ancient times have not. I have the longest rank in the universe, my lips tremble, my eyes shook. Today's sword is unparalleled. As long as the invincible is invincible, I'm afraid that no one can stop him in this universe. After someone took a deep breath, he said so. Fast. Pass this edict, from now on, all my disciples of Shinzong will meet Jian Wushuang to evade the 3 houses. Even when wandering the universe, see other disciples of life in the palace. You must be polite. 3 points. Do not offend. Otherwise, I'm afraid it will cause me a terrible disaster. There is one master, who is regarded as a hegemonic figure in the universe. 3 orders were issued on the same day, each of which is about swordsmen. There are also Zhongsho who once put words in the universe, who must die under the oppression of the dragons, or who had participated in the strangulation of Jinsho Shuang, either announced an apology directly in the universe, or sent someone to the Temple of Life to apologize and apologize. Some of them are immortal dharma, some are ancient holy places, and some are a kingdom of gods. They are usually giants in the universe, and they control the existence of life and death. But at this moment, they all showed their favor to Jian Wushuang. From the moment when Jian Wushuang beheaded Yuding Supreme, Jian Wushuang is no longer the junior bully in their eyes, but another giant arm rising from the universe, enough to set foot on the top of the universe. And those forces that have a good match with the sword, such as Jiuding Pavilion, Shinkong Jianzong, Jiuxing Holy Land, Mola Clan, and so on, also announced that the universe, they will reach an alliance with the Temple of Life, and become all the fans behind Jian Wushuang. At this moment, countless people were shocked to discover that, without knowing it, Jian Wushuang is already a lame person who can stir up the cosmic situation and beat the power of the universe for 9 days. Countless top forces tied to him. As a person, there are still people in the universe who watch from the wall. Although they no longer say some words of derogatory sword Wushuang, they are sneering in their hearts. Sooner or later Jian Wushuang will still die in the hands of the dragons. Anyway, the situation in the universe changed all the time. All kinds of speeches emerged endlessly, and the word sword warriors occupied all the topics of the universe. In the universe, a lonely starry sky, a cosmic boat is constantly breaking through the waves and galloping fast. Jian Wushuang did not stay in the spacecraft, but stood on the deck of the spacecraft with a negative hand, allowing him to be brushed by the fierce wind. He had black hair and was screamed. Yin Jianwu looked ahead, his eyes blinked constantly. From the perspective of this battle, my strength should be the ultimate. Wu Jian's eyes filled with speculation, constantly recalling the details of the fight with Yuding Supreme. In that battle, except for the last move of Tai Luo Jiandian, which was at the bottom of the box, Taro was not used. He almost came out. As for other magical powers, similar to the chaotic power in the Wu Ding Chao Ding, etc., even if it is useful, it will not affect the result. The Tai Luo sword is the card that Jian Wushuang prepared for himself. And if the dragons really come out from the strongest group of strongmen to hang him, this whole card that has never been used may be a critical moment. Keep him alive. Unless forced, Jian Wushuang will not use the Taro sword trick. Even with this sword trick, even now, he hasn't fully comprehended it. Once he used it, he didn't know what the consequences would be. Out of control too much. But even so, I have a self-protection in the universe. Thought of this, Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. At this moment, neither side of the sword thinks that he finally has a bit of self-protection in the universe. Today, he can't say that he can sweep the universe, but those who are hunted down can only hide in Tibet. I'm afraid it's gone forever. Chapter 44:28. At the same time, Jian Wushuang was driving the cosmic boat, and constantly driving towards the Qiyang God Kingdom. Many eyes in the universe are also placed on the Qiyang Divine Kingdom. Through the first 2 times of Jian Wushuang's crusade, they can be regarded as coming. Jian Wushuang went all the way to the door to kill the target, from weak to strong. For example, the first Dead Blood Temple Master was the weakest of the 6 forces that had stabbed sword unparalleled in the first place. The remaining 5 forces, with the exception of the great Japanese emperor, who has already died, have the weakest strength to reach the half-step invincible supreme. Qiyang Divine Kingdom, it's over. Countless people shook their heads. Qiyang God Domestic. Father, what shall we do now? Your Majesty, you speak. There was chaos in the palace hall. Countless leaders and ministers of the Qiyang Divine Kingdom, including the descendants of the Qiyang Divine King, looked desperately, sitting on the throne of the Qiyang Divine King. As soon as the news that the sword defeated the great Emperor of the Sun and Yuding Supreme was released, It was like a thunderbolt on a sunny day, and it blew up on everyone's head in Qiyang God Kingdom. Even the top and supreme great Japanese emperor, and the half-step invincible Yuding Supreme are dead. What is their resistance to the Qiyang Kingdom? At this moment, countless people in Qiyang God's heart are filled with endless remorse. Why? Why do you want to provoke Jian Wushuang? Okay, don't bother. Qiyang Shinjun has a square face, and the whole person is full of self-anger. He patted the armrest of the throne heavily, glanced coldly at the hall, and was frightened by the name Jian Wushuang, as if shaking a quail, and snorted coldly. At the beginning, I was going to flatten the temple of life. Strangling the sword is unparalleled. It is the most powerful of your clamor. I want to share a cup of tea after I level the temple of life. Now the sword is infinitely powerful, and everyone has not come yet. You are so frightened that everyone is in danger, and everyone is ashamed. As soon as this remark came to an end, the original mess was restored to a quiet place. Everyone present at the meeting bowed their heads, and did not dare to look directly at the Qiyang God. Where would they want to know? The sword master Wu Shuang, who dominated the realm, had a leap and had the supreme practice of beheading and invincible. Okay, all of them will stop a bit. The sword is unparalleled, and this seat will naturally find a solution. Qiyang Shinjun took a deep breath and said Shinsheng. Report. At this moment, I will hurriedly blast from outside the hall and step into the hall. Your Majesty, Jian Wushuang is already far away from Qiyang Divine Kingdom, less than 3-star domains, and will arrive today. The will look up at the Qiyang God, his face panicked. Is it so fast? Qiyang Shinjun's pupils shrink and become slightly discolored. Immediately, he got up and stood up, looked around at the people in the hall deeply, and said coldly, You are here to take it with you. What is the punishment of the sword unparalleled? Just one person bears it. In the complex eyes of everyone in the hall, Qiyang God stood up and walked towards the outside of Qiyang Palace. He hadn't waited for him to leave the palace, and a low, indifferent voice exploded loudly over the whole city. Sword of Life Jingu sword is unique. Come here to visit the kingdom of Qiyang. As soon as this remark came to an end, it was as if a heavy bomb had been dropped in the great sun god. Countless people's faces changed greatly, their faces turned pale, their bodies shook like sieve bran. Here comes Jian Wushuang comes. The discoloration in the eyes of Qiyang Shinjun flashed for a moment, and then he recovered his calmness, swept up in one step, and landed on the wall of Qiyang King City. After all, he is the man who stands at the top of the universe. He has been accustomed to the undulating waves for a long time. Although Jian Shuang is strong, he is not so scary as to smell him. Jian Wushuang, I have been waiting for you for a long time. Qiyang Shinjun stared at Jian Wushuang with complex eyes, and said with a deep voice. He didn't call this seat anymore. It means that he put the sword Wushuang in a position equal to him. Oh, the sword came from both heaven and earth, hunting in black, squinting at his eyes and wondering. Wait for a long time. Qiyang Shinjun nodded his head and replied. The sword is unparalleled. The world is the strongest. You were humble at first, but I deceived you to conform to heaven. Now you are better than me, and I have nothing to come to anything can be said, willing to admit punishment. Oh, you are frank. Wu Jianshou carried his hands and looked at him with a smile. Qiyang Shinjun looked at Jian Wushuang and did not express his attitude. There was a struggle on his face, and he bit his teeth. Sword unparalleled. No matter how angry and murderous you may be, I am the one who bears the burden of Qiyang. Let me go, and leave a little room for me. After saying that, seeing Jian Wushuang not talking, he took a deep breath, and seemed to have made a decision, and said again, Sword unparalleled. As long as you don't want to be angry with my descendants of Qiyang, strip them of cultivation, I will be willing to self-discipline. As soon as this remark came to an end, many people in Qiyang who watched this scene in the Qiyang royal palace were breathing stagnation. They didn't expect that Qiyang God would be willing to make his own decision for them. Even the sword unparalleled all brows slightly. Practice all the way. The more you get to the back, the more selfish and ruthless you are. As long as you can build the avenue. Most people do NT talk about blood relationship, Even parents and relatives can testify. Su can be like the Qiyang who is willing to sacrifice himself in order to preserve his blood. Few ancient times. But when he turned his head, Jian Wushuang also wanted to understand. I am afraid that this Qiyang Xinjun knows that it is impossible to escape today, and is doomed to fall. Then it is better to let his fall to exchange some chips and die. More valuable. He groaned for a moment or two. Jian Wushuang looked at the Qiyang god and replied slightly, yes. Hearing this, Qiyang Xinjun was relieved, but glanced at Jian Wushuang gratefully. Thank you. Then, the Qiyang monarch turned his head suddenly, looking at the many descendants of the sorrowful people in the imperial city of Qiyang. Chuanin scolded. Remember, this place is falling behind today. You must act in a low-key manner. Be safe and secure yourself. Withdraw from the depths of the universe. Practice well. You must not mention a word of revenge. You guys understand? The voice of the Qiyang gods, like a bang and drink, exploded in the minds of every descendant. These grandchildren heard the words, and immediately realized that the death of the Qiyang had been settled. No. Qiyang Xinjun no longer cares about them, but looks at Xiang Jianwushuang grinning with a grin. Sword unparalleled. Remember your promise, let them go. The reason that I planted on the day, I taste the fruit today. Qiyang go too. Ha! He stretched out his hand and patted his brow with one palm. Chapter 44-29 One sword to banish the mortal world. The void was deathly silent. Only the strong wind continued to reverberate. The spectators who had already retreated far away looked at this scene in a daze, and felt chills all over their bodies. Great Sun Prince was dead. The King of Day was dead. Even Supreme Jade Cauldron, who was a half-step unrivaled supreme, and had an all-powerful cultivation base in the universe, had been killed by Jian Wushuang. No words could describe the shock in their hearts. Originally, it was already shocking enough that Jian Wushuang had killed a supreme when he was an ultimate ruler. Now Jian Wushuang, who was a beginner supreme, had killed a half-step unparalleled supreme. This was too shocking. Such a thing had never happened in the universe. Whether it was the number one genius from 100,000 chaos cycles ago, the East Boundary, or the ninth Kulpa King, who had been regarded as a monstrous genius, none of them could compare to the current Jian Wushuang. Jade! It seems like the universe is really going to change. An elementary-level supreme killed a half-step unrivaled supreme. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. Number one heaven's favorite of all time. From now on, the entire universe will remember one name, Jian Wushuang. Legendary. Jian Wushuang is a legend. From today on, there will be one more person at the peak of the universe, and that is Jian Wushuang. If the invincible ruler doesn't show up, I'm afraid Jian Wushuang will be able to sweep across the universe. Countless people spoke. At that moment, they looked at Jian Wushuang in black with deep adoration and fanaticism in their eyes. There were even female cultivators who were dazzled in seeing stars. If it were not for the rumors in the universe that Jian Wushuang had already married, they would have rushed forward on the spot and become his wife and concubine. No one present was an idiot. Jian Wushuang was powerful and had amazing talent. No one dared to say how amazing Jian Wushuang's future achievements would be. If not for the fact that Jian Wushuang's enemies, such as the Dragon Clan and Cosmos Temple, many people in the universe would have wanted to get close to Jian Wushuang and form a good relationship. But now, after Jian Wushuang had killed the half-unrivaled Supreme Jade Cauldron, these people suddenly became bold and fearless. Jian Wushuang has only cultivated for 700,000 years, but he already has the strength to kill a half-step unparalleled supreme. If Jian Wushuang is allowed to cultivate for another 700,000 years, the Dragon Clan may not be his match. The dragon race has lived in peace for too long, and they've been arrogant for too long. It's time for someone to teach them that they're no longer universe masters. The Dragon Clan sounds powerful, but it's just that. A few second-generation dragon clans, who have been struggling to survive, can only rely on sleeping to keep their lives. The remaining third-generation dragon clans may be powerful, but when Jian Wushuang grows up completely, he might have a chance to overthrow them. I'm certain that this universe will belong to Jian Wushuang after 10,000 chaos cycles. Countless people's eyes were burning as they spoke with determination. Then, they looked at each other and walked toward Jian Wushuang, intending to form a good relationship with him. Among them, there was a concierge who came to the ancestor-worshipping ceremony. He ran quickly as he was afraid that Jian Wushuang would vent his anger on them. He quickly tried to explain. Supreme Peerless, I'm Supreme Golden Saber of the Limitless Divine Sect. I've come to greet you. Supreme Wushuang, am the island master of Five Turtle Island. I'm here to apologize to you. My participation in the Great Sun God's ancestral worship ceremony is because my ancestor is an old friend of his. All of a sudden, all kinds of fawning voices were heard. These people were all experts above middle supreme master level. However, they were all flattering Jian Wushuang and dared not show any disrespect. If this scene fell into the eyes of an uninformed person, it would definitely make one's eyes pop out. Jian Wushuang's expression was calm. These people were just grass on the wall that swayed with the wind. Fortunately, he had won today. If he had lost, these people would definitely have spat at him in disdain after he was killed by Supreme Jade Cauldron and the others. Jian Wushuang didn't pay much attention to them. He extended his right hand, and the interspatial rings of Emperor God of the Great Sun and Supreme Jade Cauldron flew toward him. After grabbing the interspatial ring, Jian Wushuang used his divine power to scan the inside of the ring, and he could not help but be moved. The wealth in their interspatial rings was simply terrifying. Even before the supreme lightning tribulation had begun, and he had many supreme treasures to self-destruct, he was far inferior to these two. These two people must have stolen many opportunities from others because of their powerful cultivation. Jian Wushuang snorted and shook his head. He put away the two interspatial rings and turned to the Great Sun Divine Kingdom. Whoosh! Jian Wushuang turned into a sword light and crossed the sky like a shooting star. He then fell into the Great Sun Divine Kingdom. Within Great Sun Divine Kingdom, many people who had not rushed out of the starry sky to watch, as well as the royal descendants who had stayed behind to guard the Great Sun Divine Kingdom, were discussing. They looked relaxed and even had the time to drink tea. It seemed like they were not worried that the King of Day and the others would lose. Queen, His Majesty the Celestial Emperor, and the others haven't returned after such a long time. Could something have happened to them? A guard from the Great Sun Divine Kingdom said with worry in his eyes. The queen was a beautiful woman. She put down her teacup and said casually, Jian Wushuang is only a beginner supreme. How can he be your majesty's opponent? Moreover, with the help of Supreme Jade Cauldron, Jian Wushuang will be executed no matter how powerful he is. This, the guard couldn't help but hesitate for a moment before saying, Queen, for safety's sake, I think we should go and take a look. Hearing this, Great Sun Queen frowned and was about to reprimand him. At this moment, accompanied by a loud rumble, a deep voice exploded like thunder and rolled down. The King of Day is dead. The other members of the Great Sun royal family are also guilty. Although they are not dead, their cultivation should be cut off as a warning to the others. Whoosh! Jian Wushuang's figure condensed in the void. In an instant, countless descendants of the Great Sun Heavenly King's royal family were scared out of their wits. They couldn't believe it. The King of Day's face turned pale instantly. How is this possible? How could His Majesty be defeated? Jian Wushuang's expression was cold, and his black hair was flying in the air. He stood proudly in the void. He looked down at Great Sun Divine Kingdom, shook his head, and slashed down with his sword. This sword will strip you of your cultivation. Boom! In an instant, the sword did not seem to cause any damage. It did not even move a blade of grass. Instead, it directly cut into everyone who had the bloodline of the King of Day. This sword move was a variant of the Eternal Night Sword move. It had the power to strip everything. It was a small superpower that Jian Wushuang had derived after he had comprehended the sword essence of Tarot Supreme. Arg! My cultivation. What's going on? Why is my cultivation level declining? Don't! In an instant, the King of Day Imperial Palace was filled with screams. Countless people could feel their cultivation levels rapidly declining, and their faces were filled with extreme shock. The people who had come with Jian Wushuang noticed this scene and shivered all over. One sword to cut off his cultivation. What kind of supernatural method was this? One must know that there were nearly 10,000 people in the Great Sun royal family. Jian Wushuang looked at them indifferently and slashed out 4 sword lights again. The 4 sword radiances shot up into the sky and then hid in the void. From today on, for the next 90 million years, no one from the King of Day royal family is allowed to step out of the King of Day palace. The King of Day imperial palace has been sealed for tens of millions of years. Buzz! The 4 sword radiances hidden in the void turned their tips and would kill anyone who dared to step out of the Great Sun imperial palace. In an instant, countless Great Sun royal family members' faces turned ashen. Jian Wushuang did not say anything more. He took a step forward and turned into a ray of light. Chapter 4430. Inside the universe starry sky, Wu Jianshou piloted the spacecraft and kept moving forward. He sat cross-legged in the space capsule, frosty between his eyebrows. Extreme. This person is definitely one of Jian Wushuang's most wanted to kill. If you say that the Lord of the Blood Temple, the Emperor of the Sun, the Emperor of the Red Sun, and others are only accomplices, then the Supreme Master of Bingyu is the culprit. White Tiger Supreme is forced to explode by being forced by Bingyu Supreme. The feud between him and Bingyu Supreme is not shared. I do know how many times Bingyu Supreme led his team to hang him, such as the one in the wild wilderness. If it wasn't for the white-haired ancestors, I'm afraid it would be dead at that time. There is an earlier Shinkong ancient road, and the prisoner dragon is the Bingyu Supreme sent to kill his sword Wushuang. If this is not the case, his sword Wushuang will not gradually face the dragon. Of course, sword Wushuang has no regrets and no fear, but his heart hates Bingyu for his supremacy. Waiting to kill me in Taishu Temple? Wu Jianshou sneered. This word was issued by Bingyu Supreme to the entire universe. He also heard the words similar to the war books. This made him kill Bingyu Supreme, and suddenly took him to another level. Even to this day, this Bingyu will never die. Very good. My sword is unparalleled to see. How do you cut me? Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and flashed a sigh of coldness. I was inside the temple of the virtual god. Su Bingyu sat on the throne with a sneer on the corner of his mouth, and rubbed a blue magic sword blade in his hand. This sword, the name of God. At that time in the wild wilderness of the universe, he strangled Jian Wushuang, but was killed halfway by the patriarch's ancestors to save them. His saber, the ice sword with the same name as him, was even inched by the patriarch's ancestors. Swallow. And this sword named, he later spent a large price to buy from an invincible supreme. In terms of power is not inferior to the original ice dagger, or even stronger. Sword is unparalleled. Take you and sacrifice this sword. Ha! Bing Extreme turned over with his right hand, pointed his sword at the void outside the temple, capturing the hunting chill. Don't wait for this seat to break through the invincible supreme. Otherwise any life shrine, any hegemonic ancestor, you must die for this seat. He chuckled in his heart, and was equally worried about the overlord ancestor, who destroyed his magic sword and blasted him with a punch. Come here. After a short while, he put away the Excalibur and called out, Da-da-da. Suddenly, a disciple of the Taishu Temple stepped in and congratulated. I ask you, where is Sword Warrior now? What's abnormal? The disciple was lying on the ground and heard the words and said, Told the Lord Emperor, Jian Wushuang is rushing to Taishu Temple quickly, and there is nothing unusual. Ah, that's good. Bing nodded supremely and sneered softly. Swords warriors, so eager to find dead people. This seat is the first time in the universe to see. Wu Jianshou drove the cosmic boat and approached the temple of Taishu continuously. Along the way, he didn't have any intention of covering his breath, so everywhere he went, there was a burst of exclaim. You see, this in this breath is sword unparalleled. The goal of Jian Wushuang, it really is the temple of two virtual. Well, Bingyu Supreme is not a bad stubble, this battle looks good. Jiang Wushuang is strong, but Bingyu Supreme is also a hard bone. The half-step invincible Supreme, who died in the hand of Bingyan Supreme is more. It is really hard to say if Jian Wushuang can take down this hard bone. Jian Wushuang's own creation. If Jian Wushuang can kill, pay attention to killing the Ice Cricket Supreme, then Jian Wushuang can almost be determined. Now he is the first person below the Supreme Master. Walk around. This battle is nothing short of ancient and ancient. It is rare and must not be missed. Hurry to Taishu Temple, it's lively this time. I heard that all the major forces have all sent people to watch the war. Once Jian Wushuang really wins, they will hold Jian Wushuang as the new king. Countless people's eyes are eager and open to discuss. Afterwards, they all drove Shiguang and swept away towards the Taishu Temple. Among them, there are representatives sent by the major forces, who have brought the Shuangguang mirror, intending to record all the details of this battle. Even the 3 masters and apprentices, who were saved by Jian Wushuang in the Terra ruins today, came to cheer for Jian Wushuang from the extremely distant wilderness. There are also Emperor Jinwu, the leader of Shaking Mountain, the Lord of Stardust, etc., one after another who has no origin with swords. This battle is highly anticipated. After 3 months, Jian Wushuang arrived at the star field where the Taishu Temple was located. The puppet star field is already full of countless people watching from all directions, and the flag is rolling like waves. Wu Jianshou stopped the spacecraft and stepped out of the cabin. There was a loud noise in my ears, and many familiar faces. Master Bloodsword, come on! How Emperor dominated his face excitedly, shouting from a distance. Bloodsword, you will win! The water which dominated the 3, and his face turned red, crowded at the outermost part of the crowd, and waved the flag to cheer. Sword does not abandon your lord, be careful. Stardust, who was already alone, dominated and clenched his fists. Wu Jianshou looked for a moment, glanced over the familiar faces, and then smiled. Rest assured. Wu Jianwushuang nodded toward them, then turned to look at the central position of Taishu Starfield, the suspended Taishu Temple, taking a deep breath. This sucking, like a whale sucking water, all the powerful wind energy around you into your mouth. Next moment, he opened his mouth to make a sound, as if the sound of a thunder blasted rolled down, shocked for 9 days in 10 places. Bingao, haven't you come to death yet? Boom! As soon as this remark came down, the miles of the sky were shaken by the earthquake, like a tsunami. Swords matchless, you it today. Immediately, a cold voice came out of the center of the Taishu Temple, and the rolling sound of the sword warriors was completely defeated. A white streamer burst out and landed 10 feet in front of Jian Wushuang. The streamer shattered, revealing the supreme figure of the moraine. Sword unparalleled. Only one of you and me today can walk out of this star field alive. Bing stood with supreme negative hands and frowned. Just what I want. The sword flickered in the eyes of Wu Jian, holding the Taro Excalibur in his right hand, and pulled it out of the scabbard an inch. A magnificent sword pressure came to the audience instantly. Come on. Su Bingji snorted extremely coldly, turned his right hand over. His body was scarlet, and the evil spirit reached the extreme sword, condensed in his hands. There is no nonsense in between. The 2 powerful auras, as if forming a substance, continued to squeeze in the void collision, setting off a horrible void storm. When everyone watched the battle, their eyes were stunned. They know. This battle of ancient times is about to begin. Chapter 44:31 Committing suicide at the same time. Just as Jian Wushuang was steering universe boat toward the Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom, many gazes within the universe were also focused on the Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom. Through the previous 2 crusades, they finally understood that Jian Wushuang's targets grew from weak to strong. For example, the Blood Sky Hall Master, who had died first, was the weakest of the 6 forces that had killed Jian Wushuang. He had the weakest foundation, and was only a top supreme. As for the remaining 5 forces, apart from the King of Day, who had already died, the weakest of them had already reached the half-step unparalleled supreme level. The Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom is finished. Countless people shook their heads. Within the Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom, Father, what should we do now? Your Majesty, say something. The Imperial Palace was in chaos. Countless commanders and ministers of the Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom, including Scarlet Sun Demon Master's descendants, looked at Scarlet Sun Demon Master on the throne in despair. The news that Jian Wushuang had killed the Emperor God of Sun and Supreme Jade Cauldron was like a bolt of lightning that struck everyone in the Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom. Even the Supreme King of the Great Sun and Supreme Jade Cauldron had died. What could the Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom do to resist? At that moment, endless regret welled up in the hearts of countless people in the Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom. Why? Why did he have to provoke Jian Wushuang? Alright, stop quarreling. Scarlet Sun Demon Master's face was square, and his entire person was filled with a sense of authority. He slammed the armrest of his throne and glanced coldly at the people in the hall, who were trembling like quails because of Jian Wushuang's name. He snorted and said, "Back then, when I was going to flatten the Divine Life Palace and kill Jian Wushuang, you were the ones who made the most noise. You wanted to get a share of the loot after I flattened the Divine Life Palace. Now Jian Wushuang is powerful. He hasn't even arrived yet, but you're all so scared that you're all in danger. It's really embarrassing." As soon as he finished speaking, the originally chaotic hall immediately returned to silence. Everyone present lowered their heads, not King of Day to look at the Scarlet Sun Demon Master. How could they have imagined that Jian Wushuang, who was only at the ruler realm, would have the cultivation to kill a half-step unparalleled supreme with a leap? Alright, let's all calm down. Since Jian Wushuang is here, he'll naturally find a way to solve it. The Scarlet Sun Demon Master took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Report." At this moment, a divine general rushed in from outside the hall and entered it. "Your Majesty, Jian Wushuang is less than 3-star areas away from the Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom. He will arrive within the next few days." The divine general raised his head and looked at the Scarlet Sun Demon Master with a terrified expression. "It's so fast." The Scarlet Sun Demon Master's pupils shrank, and his expression changed slightly. Then he stood up and looked at the people in the hall. He said coldly, "You guys stay here. I will bear all the punishment for Jian Wushuang." As soon as he finished speaking, the Scarlet Sun Demon Master stood up and walked out of the Imperial Palace under the complicated gazes of everyone in the hall. Before he could walk out of the palace, a deep and cold voice exploded in the sky above the entire Yunwu city. "Jian Wushuang from the Divine Life Palace is here to pay a visit to the Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom." His words were like a bombshell in the Great Sun Divine Kingdom. Countless people's expressions changed drastically. Their faces turned pale, and their bodies trembled like screaming chaff. "He's here, he's here. Jian Wushuang is here." The Scarlet Sun Demon Master's eyes also lost color for a moment before he regained his calm. He took a step and landed on the city wall of the Scarlet Sun Royal City. After all, he was the man who stood at the peak of the universe. He had been a hero for a long time, and had long been used to the ups and downs of the waves. Although Jian Wushuang was strong, he was not so strong that he would be afraid of him. "Jian Wushuang, I've been waiting for you for a long time." Scarlet Sun Demon Master looked at Jian Wushuang with a complicated gaze and said in a deep voice. He didn't call me by name anymore, which meant that he regarded Jian Wushuang as an equal. "Oh." Jian Wushuang came over with his black clothes fluttering in the wind. He squinted his eyes and asked, "You've been waiting for me for a long time?" The Scarlet Sun Demon Master nodded and replied, "Jian Wushuang, in this world, only the strong are respected. Back then, you were weak, so I bullied you. I was following the way of heaven. But now you are stronger than me. Even if you come to me, I have nothing to say. I am willing to accept my punishment." "Hee, you're quite frank." Jian Wushuang looked at him with a faint smile. Seeing that Jian Wushuang didn't express his opinion, Scarlet Sun Demon Master seemed to be struggling. He gritted his teeth and said, "Jian Wushuang, no matter how angry and murderous you are, I, Scarlet Sun, will bear it alone. Let my descendant go, and leave some leeway." After that, he saw that Jian Wushuang did not speak, so he took a deep breath, as if he had made a decision, and said again, "Jian Wushuang, as long as you don't vent your anger on my descendants and strip them of their cultivation, I am willing to commit suicide." As soon as he finished speaking, the people of Scarlet Sun, who were watching the scene in the Imperial Palace, held their breaths. They had never expected that the Scarlet Sun Demon Master would be willing to commit suicide for their sake. Even Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows slightly. On the path of cultivation, the further one cultivated, the more selfish and emotionless one would become. As long as one could cultivate the great Tao, an ordinary person could even cut off their parents and Tao companions to verify their Tao, let alone blood and kinship. There were very few people like the Scarlet Sun Demon Master who were willing to sacrifice themselves in order to preserve their bloodline. However, Jian Wushuang quickly understood. The Scarlet Sun Demon Master probably knew that he would not be able to escape today, and was destined to die. In that case, it would be better to exchange his death for some bargaining chips, so that his death would be more valuable. After a moment of silence, Jian Wushuang looked at Scarlet Sun Demon Master, and replied indifferently, yes. Upon hearing this, Scarlet Sun Demon Master heaved a sigh of relief, and looked at Jian Wushuang with gratitude. Many thanks. Chapter 4432. Jian Wushuang's eyes closed slightly. Baoxiang solemn. The tailored Excalibur in his hand, as thin as smoke and sand, began to dissipate from the point of the sword. A feeling of palpitations suddenly amplified in everyone's heart. Good coercion. It will change. Rewind. Instantly, the audience members who had already retreated far away retreated backwards and opened the distance. Oh! Sun Bingshuan's eyes, which originally had no waves in the ancient well, narrowed for the first time, revealing a slight shock. Huh! The land under Wu Jianhui's feet began to collapse rapidly around him. A crater is constantly spreading out at a very fast speed, like a cosmic black hole that swallows everything silently and silently. Huge gravitational force is transmitted from the center of the vortex of the pit, and it continuously swallows all kinds of energy in the starry sky. All quietly next, it turns into nothingness. Even the sun that hangs high in the sky, and the dazzling Milky Way across the sky hundreds of millions of miles, is driven by this gravitational force, rolls in, and then falls into a giant pit. A sword at dusk, the gods at dusk. Ha! The ice mast, who was standing above the void, and was constantly thinking about it, was suddenly pulled by a big hand, and was dragged into the pit instantly. Suddenly, the hearts of everyone watching the game shivered. In the face of this move, how can everyone not know that the original Yuding Supreme was dragged into the pit of the dusk, and then he lost his initiative? Without the power of World War I, he could only be used by the power of the pit of the dusk, continued to pass away, and finally was executed by Jian Wushuang's four-seasoned swordsmanship. Immediately, the strong face of the Taishu temple shouted sharply, "Sword unparalleled! Let our God Emperor come out!" Yes, otherwise don't blame me for waiting. Wu Jianwushuang heard the words, glanced at them scornfully and sneered. It's up to you? Ha! The words fell. Jian Wushuang stretched out his fingers and bowed a little, and suddenly a sharp sword blasted out from his fingertips, hitting the shouting loudest elementary supreme strong. Ha! Suddenly, this sword gas passed through the eyebrow of that elementary supreme powerman. The sharp sword intention crushed every inch of the god's power in this person's body. You! Instantly, this elementary supreme powerman, before he said a word, collapsed his body and destroyed him. Instant seconds. Suddenly, the other powerful men in the Taishu temple shrank their pupils, and dared to reach out and tremblingly pointed at Jian Wushuang. But they did not dare to say a word. After finished all of this, Jian Wushuang turned his head, looked indifferently to the extreme icy supreme, and slowly extended his hand forward to grab the void. Buried. Boom! Suddenly, the pit at dusk turned on, and a powerful horror reached the extreme majestic strength, squeezing and colliding towards the ice-masked supreme. Under this tremendous force of squeezing and collision, even though he is as strong as Ice Cricket, his body is shaking, and there is a little flush on both sides of his cheek. Next moment, sword unparalleled. This trick is okay against others, but you can't trap me. Bing Extreme sits cross-legged, takes a deep breath, and then sighs coldly. Supernatural power, frozen world. Click. With this sentence falling down, the cold mang on Bingyu's supreme sword, and a piercing chill permeated by the naked eye pervaded. But the energy of the direct void was frozen. In the void suddenly ice. For a short period of time, the ice dipper is sucked in the center, and the twilight pits that are squeezed continuously are frozen and frozen, just like eggshells. Bing stood up and stood up, a cruel arc evoked in the corner of his mouth. These avatars of Bingyu Supreme are not those low-level avatars that are merely flower racks condensed with divine power. But each avatar contains the full power of Bingyu Supreme, and if the sword Wushuang wants to destroy it at the same time, if there are thousands of avatars, it means Jian Wushuang, and it will have the power to hit the ice mastiff with extreme strength. How easy is it? Suddenly, those who are no match for the sword, such as Hao Ember, Jiuxing Xingzi, Water Witch Master, apprentices and Star Master, all clenched their fists tightly, and a heart reached his throat. At this moment, countless people were silent. Wu Jianzhou has fallen into danger. Chapter 44-33. Ha! At this moment, hundreds of thousands of Ice Moth's supreme virtual shadows are flying away, killing the sword unparalleled. Wu Jianshuang's face sank, his eyes flashed with dignity, and he did not dare to have the slightest intention, and directly open the strongest state of chaos Ba. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's pair of purple and gold eyes soared, and the eyebrow, Chuan, became more and more prominent. On his body, a series of crisscross ancient patterns appeared. Broken! Wu Jianshuang yelled loudly, raised his fist and blasted towards one of the Ice Moth's supreme virtual shadows, and the majestic strength fell like a waterfall. Ha! Suddenly the sky was shaking. That virtual shadow shattered one after another, and Jian Wushuang was also shaken, his face pale and uncertain. He didn't allow him to rest for a while, and the second ghost had already hit him. Qi Jian Wushuang had to sideways avoid. After half a column of incense, Wing Jian Wushuang gasped slightly, with a few more scars on his body, looking at the still overlapping ice mastiff, the supreme shadow, and his thoughts flashed. I can't go on like this. Although each of these ghost images is not strong, and only contains the blow of the supreme ice cream, there are too many ghost images. If you continue to fight like this, I'm afraid I will be dragged to death here. I took a deep breath, and Jian Wushuang did not hesitate again, and said lightly, Tora Sword Code 4th Style 4 Seasons. Howl dash. As soon as this remark came to an end, within a square of a circle centered around Jian Wushuang, it turned into long winter. Countless snowfalls, and shoots at that ice supreme virtual shadow. This is not over yet, Jian Wushuang yelled again. Talented, amazing life. Talent of magic, primitive universe. Boom. Suddenly two extremely powerful amounts of repression came to the world again. This world is completely controlled by Jian Wushuang. I saw the icy wind and snow transformed by the 4 seasons sword gas. Under the blessing of the primitive universe and the shock of life, the power suddenly rose again, the wind screamed, with Mori Han's murderous power, fell on every path of the ice masked supreme. On the ghost card. Suddenly, the thousands of icy phantoms froze, and the action of attacking and killing the sword unparalleled became sluggish. This is the ice mastiff, who was hidden among thousands of people, suddenly changed his face slightly. He also felt the strong force of ice cold. Under this ice cold power, even his movements became a little slow. It is rumored that Taylor Supreme has left a total of 5 peerless methods to suppress the universe. This move should be one of Taylor Supreme's 5 masterpieces. For seasoned sword energy. The thoughts of Bing Binx's eyes were quickly considered, and the contempt for Jian Wushuang in his heart gradually disappeared, and turned into dignity. 4 seasons turn. Qi Jian Wushuang quickly drew his hands and drank again. Suddenly, the severe cold snow disappeared, and a spring thunder blew out of nowhere. Then countless drizzles fell from the sky. This drizzle directly covered the entire Taishu star field. There was doubt in the eyes of a strong man in Taishu Temple, and he reached for a drop of raindrops. Instantly, this raindrop pierced his entire palm. Not good. This is sword spirit. Rewind. Suddenly, the man shouted in surprise. Then, the ice mastiff supreme virtual shadow, which was slightly frozen by the midwinter sword air, was dripped by this overwhelming raindrop, and it suddenly seemed to be cut open by a sword, making a bang, and then it broke apart. For a while the dense raindrops dripped, like playing a lute in the universe, with small chords like whispers, noisy and miscellaneous bullets, and big beads and beads falling on the jade plate. Where is this spring rain? Obviously a disaster. Just a few breaths. Chapter 44-34. Moraine Supreme fell? At this moment, countless spectators who have recovered have all stared at the place shrouded by that huge mushroom cloud. The sight of was blocked by the mushroom cloud, heavy haze. Even if they exerted their divine power, they could not see through it, and there was a quiet peace inside, without any sound of the Moraine Supreme. Master Bloodsword must have won. The leader is invincible. It is too strong not to abandon your excellency. Seeing this, the master of How Ember and others all couldn't help showing joy, and shook his fists heavily. Other watchers are holding their breaths, and are afraid to blink. Extreme. Has it fallen? 9 days in the void. Jian Wushuang looked down at the place where the former Bingyu Supreme was, and there was no joy on everyone's face, but his brows gradually frowned. In the monstrous mushroom cloud, he did not feel the supreme breath of the ice mast. As usual, the general breath returned to nothingness, which means that this life machine has disappeared and has fallen. But somehow, Jian Wushuang not only did not feel any relaxation, but he felt a great terror between life and death. His entire body, as if stared at by an ancient and wild monster, was covered with sweat. At this moment, a dull sound of beating heartbeat rang in the mushroom cloud, as if someone sang the drums of Gu Tianting. Ha! 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 This voice is getting louder and louder. At last! Roar! The thick mushroom cloud shrouded in thousands of miles was ripped apart. Extreme stride out. Suddenly his robe was torn, his hair was loose, and blood was flowing between his eyebrows. Even the wide wings condensed from ice crystals on the back were blown up. However, he was full of an extremely dangerous and violent breath. Frost froze on his blood-stained face, as if wearing a mask, condensing half of his face. Sword unparalleled. You can push this seat to this point. This seat has to say, underestimated you. Bing Extreme voice is hoarse, unlike humans, as if there are 2 iron pieces rubbing in his throat. It's just a pity that you killed Yu Ding with this trick, but you can't kill me. Jian Wushuang didn't answer. Tai Luo Excalibur silently gathered in his hands, and his vigilance was raised to the extreme. Far away, How Ember, who had already begun to cheer, dominated the others, and the smile on his face gradually solidified. Isn't this dead? Bingao Supreme is worthy of being the strongest in the half-step invincible Supreme. Where is it so easy to fall? Jian Wushuang, there is trouble. And others sighed. Okay, sword unparalleled, this is the end of the game. Sun Bingxian raised his head to look at Jian Wushuang. The corner of his mouth evoked a weird arc next moment. Supernatural power, I am the Emperor. Boom! Suddenly, the Bingyu Supreme body skyrocketed steadily, and the whole person swelled up like an inflatable. 100,000 feet. For a short period of time, Bingyu Supreme Demon stood up and turned into a giant ice giant. The atmosphere of his whole person changed, as if heaven and earth had crowned him, and an emperor crown appeared on his head. He was covered with thick ice crystals all over his skin, as if wearing a heavy armor. He held in his hands a handle made of ice crystals, and a huge ice sword condensed in his hands. He holds the ice sword in his hand, as if holding an iceberg in his hand. At his feet, the sword unparalleled was as small as a cricket ant. Suddenly, countless people were horrified and startled. What magic power is this? I can feel that the current Bingyu Supreme is at least 10 times stronger than just now. No wonder the previous Emperor Taishi was willing to hand over the position to Bingyu Supreme and leave with confidence. It turned out that Bingyu Supreme hit such a killer. Before, I also said that Bingyu Supreme declared the universe, and said that it would be too conceited to kill sword unparalleled here. Now it seems that where is this conceit? Obviously I have absolute confidence. And how Ember dominated the others, even more upset. Why? How could this be? Boom! Instantly Bingyu moved. This move, he stepped on the ground directly, stepped tens of thousands of feet away, and stepped down towards the sword unparalleled. Sword warriors, the magical power of this seat is far from what you can imagine. Bing Extreme laughed lowly, revealing a sense of madness. Beneath this foot, the whole world seems to be under pressure, and every inch collapses. Qi Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and Shin-channeled. Dawn! Cut! Ha! Wu Jianso again turned into breaking Dawn Jianmong. Yu Jian left, and stabbed on the supreme calf fiercely. This sword can cut off the gods. Ding! Countless ice crystals splash. But it is even the layer of ice crystals on the skin of Bingyu Supreme, which cannot be pierced. Cut star! Qi Jian Wushuang did not hesitate to forgive, and the nearly 10,000 forest blue swordsman gathered in his hands and chopped again. However, no, it's still useless. Everything is useless. Shocked the tree ridiculous. Sun Bingji shook his head with a scornful smile and swept his giant foot at will, directly throwing the sword masterpiece of magical powers, slamming it into the air. Ha! Wu Jianshuang flew out of his body, and a spit of blood was spit out by him. Come again. Wu Jian's eyes are so wary. His body is full of golden light, and the royal sword is heading towards Bingyu Supreme again. Taro Sword Code 4th Style 4 Seasons. In the void, the heavenly sword gasified into spring rain and came to the world. However, before it was still invincible, the 4 seasons of sword energy was destroyed, but it could only cut off the ice crystals on the top of Bingyu, causing no trace of injury. Stupid struggle. Bing Extreme smiled slightly and stretched out the ice sword to cut it severely. Instantly, the whole world was filled with this sword. The gigantic air machine makes the universe boil, as if to reopen chaos and create a new world. 4 seasons sword chi is crushed directly. Boom! Then, this sword fell on Jian Wushuang and blasted it. Under this sword, even if Jian Wushuang has a chaotic domineering body, it will collapse. Sword is unparalleled. It is not only you who is a genius in the world, nor is it only one person who possesses supernatural powers. Extremely raised the corners of his mouth. The magical powers of this seat have been cultivated for tens of thousands of years, and you can't catch up. Can you understand? After a few breaths, Sword Wushu deity reorganized. He took a deep breath, stood up from the ground, and looked at the Ice Cream Supreme who was holding a winning ticket. His expression suddenly calmed down. Chapter 44-36. Roar! At this moment, Bingyu Supreme burned with divine power, and the whole person was full of danger to the extreme. Every step he took, he stepped out of a pit in the void, and made a loud popping sound. Come on, Jian Wushuang. I can't live, you die for me. Bingyu Extreme laughed wildly, eyes full of endless madness. He hated Tai Luo Supreme. At the time, he had cultivated with him in the same way, but he was much stronger than him, asking the top of the universe. He hated the sword unparalleled. His talent is extraordinary, and it is rare in the ancient world. He is so low as to be low, but he can still fight with him, forcing him to fight with death. How unfair the sky is. There is a Taro Supreme, and a sword unparalleled. Why hasn't he spoiled him forever? Ha! Bingyu Extreme approached madly, and his body swelled like a bomb about to explode. It was extremely dangerous. No, let's retreat. Bingyu Extreme is desperate. In this blow, Bingyu Supreme has been determined to die. He is going to pull his sword to end with him. Crazy and crazy, Bingyu Supreme is completely crazy. At this moment, countless people watching the battle in the distance were crazed and angered to the extreme. You must know that the destructive power of Bingyu Supreme is the most powerful forbidden technique of the Taishi Temple, which not only destroys the enemy, but also destroys itself. The power that erupted at that instant was enough to draw them into destruction. Ha 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 ha, want to escape? Anyone who comes today will die. Seeing this, Bingyu Extreme laughed loudly, quickly printed his hands with his hands, and directly applied the Fengtian divine art, which would ban the 100,000 miles of the surrounding sky. Those spectators who were retreating suddenly seemed to hit an invisible wall. The action of retreating and escaping was instantly delayed. Suddenly, many cosmic powers of the universe, who watched the battle through the Xuanguang mirror, became extremely blue. Temple of Life Supreme Temple, Bloodwave Supreme, Giant Axe Supreme, and others raised their heads and stared at the Xuanguang mirror. A solemn, quiet needle can be heard. And just after Bingyu Supreme cast his destructive power, Jack, Bloodwave Supreme got up sharply and stood up, with 3 inches of sharp eyes in his eyes. This Bingyu Supreme has lost his mind in order to kill the sword unparalleled. Regardless of the consequences, he really should kill. The other great masters, although not speaking, were also grimly dripping water. This scene, similar to the Temple of Life, is constantly being performed in the core of the universe. On the starry sky of Taishu Temple, there was a sound of horror begging for mercy. No, let us go. Vingao Supreme, your goal is Jian Wushuang. It has nothing to do with us. Yes, it's good if you look for Sword Wushuang. Someone tried to arouse Binjia's supreme reason. Vingao, if you do this, you will pull the entire Taishu Temple into the endless place. Stop it now. There are also attempts to threaten Moraine Supreme. However, the supreme sight of Bingyu, made him laugh more and more crazy. Ha ha ha, are you scared? If you don't want to be buried with me, it's easy, then you can kill Swordsman with me. When this remark came to an end, everyone shivered. Immediately, a few people looked at Jian Wushuang, their eyes struggling. And the sword Wushuang, which belongs to the center of destruction, was indifferent, expressionless, unhappy or sad. Facing the imminent Bingyu extreme, Jian Wushuang's black hair flew, starlight lingered around him, and uttered a word calmly. Cut. At the next moment, Jian Wushuang slowly raised his hand, and the tailored Excalibur held by him held up. Behind him, the huge Taro Supreme virtual shadow, just like the shadow of the sword unparalleled, like the shadow follows, raises his hand, and makes the sword-cutting action. At this moment, Jian Wushuang and Tai Luo Supreme merged. Puff! Suddenly, a crimson sword mang cut from the Taro Excalibur. Rumble! Billowing thunder. No words can be used to describe this extremely beautiful sword. As if the universe was split open to both sides, the sky was torn apart like a scroll. The endless sky of the sky was torn directly into a jagged mouth, and turned into a broken void hole. As Qianlong ascended to the sky, as Tianhe rolled down, this sword, covering the sun and the moon, swept across the sky. This sword is enough to make the peoples bow their heads and suppress all dissatisfaction. After the sword was cut, whether it was the gigantic laughter of Bingyu Supreme, or the voices of spectators who beg for mercy or threats, all stopped abruptly. Everyone was holding their breath, watching it blankly, which filled the entire starry sky, and became a dazzling sword. This sword, the power of Huang Huang, is not visible. Puff! The next moment, the sword was cut like a tofu, and passed straight through the huge chest of the Ice Supreme. Bingyu Supreme still keeps her footsteps and strides forward. However, on his chest, a huge hollow with thick feet appeared directly. No blood spills, no divine power dissipates, no ice crystals splash. This sword directly annihilated everything that Bingyu Supreme. Bingyu Extreme's huge body fell to his knees. He lowered his head and stared blankly at the gradual hollowing of his chest. I lost. Ha 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 ha. His body diminished quickly, returning to its normal state, and the ice crystals covering his skin dissipated like sand. He could feel that at this moment, his majestic vitality and majestic power were quickly dissipating. The world in front of him quickly turned black, and he saw Jian Wushuang suddenly weaken to the extreme after wielding the sword. The Taro Supreme virtual reality on his back had collapsed inch by inch. If you shoot at this time, you can definitely kill the sword without double-clicking. But he had no chance. Just when he thought he was about to die, a sigh sounded in the heavens and the earth. Bingao, you let this seat down. The next moment in this void, I saw a middle-aged man wearing a crown, wearing a black gold 9-claw dragon robe, wearing a purple gold crown, and looking courageous, bathed in thunder, step out of the void. To Emperor God. The real master behind the Taishu Temple is also the heavenly power to open the Taishu Temple, invincible and supreme. Suddenly, because the crisis was lifted, everyone in the heart breathed a sigh of relief and exclaimed, "The sword is unparalleled, and that's it." In the eyes of the Emperor Taishu, the thunderous light flickered, and he looked slightly towards the body supported by the tailored Excalibur, drained of divine power, and the shaky sword Wuxia. His words were bland, but filled with an unquestionable power. Chapter 4437. To Emperor God. The pioneers of the Taishu Temple really opened up the territory and suppressed the power of the universe. In the entire universe, he can be compared with him. But the number of hands is not a tribe of ancestors, or the ruler of the immortal Holy Land. After he appeared, the entire noisy universe was suddenly dead. Everyone was too dare to look at the Emperor Taishu and lowered his head. Jian Wuxia, this seed is nothing but entanglement between you and you. From now on, all the past will be written off. How? Emperor Taishu looked at Jian Wuxia indifferently and said. After that he waved his sleeves. The Morina Supreme, which was dying out, recovered quickly at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. Bingyu Supreme first glanced at Jian Wuxia viciously, then immediately looked at Emperor Taishu, and his eyes were full of fear. Master God, he shivered, and just wanted to open his mouth to speak. The words just came out, and I saw the Emperor Taishu coldly gave him a sideways glance, scolding, "Is it not enough to be ashamed? Go back, and then go to the extraterritorial battlefield with this seat later." Seeing this Taishu God Emperor, Bingyu Supreme, just like a mouse seeing a cat, he suddenly trembled when he heard the words, and looked at Jian Wuxia with a resentful glance. Jian Wuxia struggled to stand up from the sky, looking at this scene. His face suddenly became extremely ugly. He managed to slay the Bingyu Supreme today, but he did not expect that the Emperor Xuanxi was killed in the air and rescued the Bingyu Supreme. If you can't kill Bingyu Supreme today, I'm afraid that you will kill Bingyu Supreme in the future. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wu's eyes flashed and said, "Master, Emperor Bingyu, 3 or 5 times, he wants to put me to death, and it is the main force that pacifies the life shrine twice. I do know how many disciples die in life. You are too vain in the hands of the temple. You are now a bit too light about it, isn't it a bit too light?" Oh. Emperor Taishu raised a brow when he heard his words, as if he was surprised that Jian Wuxia dared not follow his instructions, and his voice became cold, and he replied, "Jian Wuxia, are you in this seat to discuss with you?" Huh. The voice fell, and a momentum like a mountain broke out from the Emperor Taishu. Moment. Jian Wuxia was smashed by this momentum, and immediately as if hit by a sledgehammer, the whole person fell to the ground fiercely, and the body almost shattered. This momentum came fast and went fast, and in just one breath, it was taken back by the Emperor Taishu. He glanced down on the ground, his face became incredibly pale. Jian Wuxia said coldly, "Jian Wuxia, if this seat was not in the face of the old senior Gav just now, this one will kill you." Jian Wuxia was lying in the void, although the spirit of the Emperor Taishu had been withdrawn, invisibly, as if there was still a big mountain pressing on his back. He couldn't stand up. Is this the power of invincibility? Jian Wuxia clenched his fists tightly, and his eyes were filled with endless humiliation. He thought he had broken through the supremacy, and he dared not say that he could run across the universe. At least he had a little self-protection, but only at this moment, when he truly faced the invincible Supreme, did he know how small he was. He was in front of Emperor Taishu, just like Bingyu Supreme was in front of the patriarchs, and he had no resistance at all. The gap between the half-step invincible Supreme and the invincible Supreme is too big. Emperor Taishu looked at Jian Wuxia, and gradually sneered at the corners of his mouth, and said, "Sword Wuxia, this seat looks at your eyes. Do you seem to disagree?" Jian Wuxia did not answer. In the face of absolute power, all words are pale. Emperor Taishu shook his head and said, "If you are unconvinced, you can wait for your recovery, and come to the extraterrestrial battlefield to find me. This seat is waiting for you." After that, Emperor Taishu would leave. However, He just turned around and seemed to think of something again. He stepped out and said, "Swords are unparalleled. Look at GVS Supreme face. I would like to remind you that you act low-key, and your strength has not allowed you to. This universe is rampant. This universe is much wider than you think. You think you are talented and fighting across borders is enough to be proud and arrogant. It's just that your vision is too small and limited by cultivation. See this side of the world. In this universe, Emo said that your sword Wushuang is nothing. Even this seat is just a drop in the ocean. The true strong in Tianjiao, you are not qualified to see it now." Having said that, the Emperor Taishian narrowed his eyes, and a radiance of unintelligible radiance was drawn at the corners of his mouth, suppressing the sound to a decibel that only the two of them could hear, one word at a time. "Jian Wushuang, do you think that when the universe was invincible, how did Tai Luo Supreme, who was proud of himself, die?" As soon as this remark was made, Jian Wushuang was shocked. Emperor Taishu shook his head and said, "Okay, the sword is unparalleled. Now Gap is supremely asleep. You do and even have a beam carrying a beam in your temple of life. Do and let it be because of your humble life like dust. The temple of life behind it has caused a great disaster." After speaking, Emperor Taishu looked at Jian Wushuang a bit with disgust and playfulness, and without further ado, disappeared into the starry sky in one step. With the departure of Emperor Taishu, this battle finally came to a successful end. Victory! Master Bloodsword wins. Extreme Ice Cricket, lost to Sword Incomparable. Suddenly, Hao Emperor, who was close to Jian Wushuang, dominated the crowd and cheered. The other strong men who came to watch the war were also in awe. They rushed up, embracing the sword unparalleled in the middle, saying the words of flattery. However, Jian Wushuang's heart was not happy at all. "Is this winning?" Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly in his heart. The last word of Emperor Taishu was like a bombshell that exploded in his mind. Seriously, have you not seen the real universe? At this moment, the universe that he originally thought was clear had suddenly become blurred and seemed to have a mysterious veil. And how did Taro Supreme, who was so powerful back then, die? According to the remnant thought of Supreme Master Tai Luo, it seems to be related to a person called Emperor. Who is this Emperor? Endless thoughts flowed, but Jian Wushuang couldn't figure it out. So he shook his head and said silently, "Weak, weak, weak, weak. After all, I'm still too weak." Chapter 4438. Master Bloodsword, do you have any thoughts? The master of Hao Hao noticed the incompatibility of Jian Wushuang and raised his doubts and asked. Jian Wushuang didn't talk back, but Hao Ember dominated it like he guessed something and laughed. "Master Bloodsword, you can use the elementary supreme practice to defeat the half-step invincible supreme ice mast. It's already very powerful. That's too hypocritical. You do and need to be attentive to what God says." Wu Jinsho smiled and did not answer. He just looked up at the starry sky of Wudi with a negative hand, thinking in his eyes, extraterritorial battlefield. He was very keen to capture the word extraterritorial battlefield in the mouth of Emperor Taishu. He is no stranger to these four words. As soon as he broke through the Supreme, Bloodwave Supreme had mentioned it in a vague manner. The Outland battlefield is a battlefield located at the edge of the universe. Therefore, the cosmic preaching of the universe appears to be extremely rare, because the of the universe sits in the extraterrestrial battlefield all year round, and rarely returns to the depths of the universe. Moreover, according to the Supreme Master of Blood, the owner of the Palace of Lives Shrine went to the extraterritorial battlefield before returning without news. In addition, most of the invincible supremes in the universe are basically gathered in extraterritorial battlefields. Extraterritorial. Wu Jianso continued to ponder, what does this outside mean? After a short while, the swordless Tue Hao Emperor and others bid farewell and left Taishu Temple. However, instead of going to the Diwu Temple and the Dragon Race, he set up a cosmic boat and sailed towards the Temple of Life. 23 days later, the sword-cutting ice supreme thing spread throughout the universe. Suddenly, the universe was trembling again, and it was boiling. The powerful people of the universe are even more uproar. Then they couldn't sit still. and went to the Temple of Life to form a war alliance with the Temple of Life. Then, the details of the battle between Jian Wushuang and Bingyu Supreme spread through the entire universe, through the Shuangguang mirror. Countless people watched this battle with interest, marveled at it, and made a terrible case. The talent of the sword is unparalleled, the sword skill is outstanding, and it is rare in all ages. Sword warriors will become the second Taro Supreme. No, when Tai Luo Supreme was in the realm of Jian Wushuang, he was far less powerful than Jian Wushuang. You said, how was Jian Wushuang's last move released at the time? Could it be that Tai Luo Supreme was really not dead? Or was Jian Wushuang reincarnated? For a moment, all kinds of strange discussions were all uproar. The universe is full of discussions about the sword unparalleled. Unconsciously, Jian Wushuang has already become a legend that makes others look up. Sunstar Field, home of the Jinwu family. 9 fireballs practiced into a line, revolving around an extremely huge sun. Here is the old nest of the Jinwu family. The huge sun in the middle is the palace of Emperor Jinwu, Jian Wushuang. Can you be able to slay half-step invincible supreme? Emperor Jinwu stood erect in the sun, staring at the distant starry sky for a moment. Once upon a time, the two still had a battle in the ancient sky, and he has been working hard to improve himself, so that one day, he can fight against Jian Wushuang again. He was retreating when Jian Wushuang attended the Grand Cosmos event. When Jian stepped on the 4 forces, he was in retreat. Now he is finally out of customs. Sun became the second supreme of Jinwu tribe after King Jinwu. He thought that he had broken through the supreme, and he had the power to resist with the swordless chamber. As a result, when he vowed, ready to go out to find Sword Wushuang, he heard the news that Jian Wushuang's sword chopped ice. What kind of character is Bing Bing? The famous half-step invincible supreme in the universe, the master of the dominant power. Regarding strength and reputation, he is not even under his father, King Jinwu, and is even stronger. The result is such a great power. If it wasn't for the Emperor Su Xia arrived, he would have been killed by Jian Wushuang? Is this sword Swordsman? The Emperor Jinwu murmured to himself, only felt that the more he understood Jian Wushuang, the more he felt that the gap between the two was too big, and even to the point where he could hardly look back and looked up. Crackling. At this moment, a footstep sounded behind him. He is the Emperor Jinwu, walking step by step from the depths of the palace. He saw Emperor Jinwu's glance at Emperor Jinwu, and then said, Lianer, pack up quickly, and go to the Temple of Life with your father. What? The Emperor Jinwu heard a word and wondered. Father, what are we going to do at the Temple of Life? The Emperor Jinwu glared at him and replied, Isn't it going to help you wipe your in the past? It was in the Xingkong Ancient Road that you had a festival with Jian Wushuang. It was because of the god's thoughts left on you. Save it. Although this matter has passed a long time, and it is not too much resentment, but no one knows whether Jian Wushuang is a revenge and regretful person. Today, the sword unparalleled sword is invincible in half a step, and it has become a great climate. The title is unparalleled. When it comes to strength, he is not even his father's opponent. His wrists can't beat him. Naturally, he must rush to the door to apologize. This resentment, if he does not remember it, can be regarded as a good destiny. When the Emperor Jinwu heard a shock, Jian Wushuang was already so strong that he needed his father, and he had to come to the court to please him. Well, don't think too much about it. Everyone has his own life. Jian Wushuang is a rare evil in all ages. What do you compare with him? Emperor Jinwu smiled a little, patted Emperor Jinwu's shoulder and smiled. Go, let me go to the Temple of Life. Prince Jinwu nodded gently, and similar to the above scene, is constantly being staged in the universe. Inside the universe starry sky, Wu Jinsho drove the spacecraft, riding the wind and waves all the way, flying fast. He didn't rush back to the Temple of Life, but went to the glacier forbidden area, in the far north of the universe, to pick up the cold frost. After that, he rushed back to the Temple of Life. For him, it is already his limit to make the sword press the Ice Supreme. The Diwu Shrine and the Dragon Clan are all behemoths with invincible supreme level power to sit in town. Chapter 4439. Jian Wushuang has returned to the Temple of Life for 3 months. There was a constant stream of people who came to visit him. These people are either the Lord of one holy land, or the Emperor, who opened up the kingdom of God. They are all lame, and the whole universe will shake the power of heaven. At the beginning, Jian Wushuang was quite patient. He talked with them about brewing wine, and he was very polite, but after a long time, he found that he had no time to practice, so he closed the door and refused to let the other Supreme of Life Shrine go with it. Chat. Life Shrine, the 6th mountain. Inside the Sword Unparalleled Manor, Bloodwave Supreme and Great Axe Supreme come to the guest. The 3 of them sat by the lake beside the manor and made a cup of spirit tea for the 3 as cold as frost, and they resigned gracefully without affecting the 3's conversation. Extreme Blood, I have always had 3 questions to ask you, and I want to ask you to help me out. Wu Jinshuang said. Okay. Su Bobo Supreme raised his eyebrows and quipped. Jian Wushuang, you have been the hottest person in the universe recently. Do you still have anything to ask me? After a long pause, Bloodwave Supreme smiled. Well, if you have any questions, just ask directly. Why should we be so polite between us? Jian Wushuang nodded his head, and after groaning for a second or two, he slowly opened his mouth and asked, Extreme Blood, what is the universal battle of catastrophe? What is the extraterrestrial battlefield? Also, when Tai Luo Supreme was extremely prosperous, rarely meet rivals in the universe, who will kill him in an instant. Even the kingdom of God is destroyed together? Shuebwa Supreme heard the words, looked at the giant axe Supreme, and did not rush to answer, but his expression gradually became dignified. After a long time, Shuebwa Supreme said, Jian Wushuang, even if you don't ask these things, this seat was originally intended to tell you. Since you asked today, then this seat will give you confusion. First, when it comes to the Holocaust, I have to tell you about the universe first. Jian Wushuang, do you think the universe is unique? When Jian Jinshuang heard this, he couldn't help but start a deep breath and calmly replied, I don't know, but the universe I see is the only one. Bloodwave Supreme said, took the Lingcha at the table and took a sip, then said, before that catastrophe, all of us, like you, thought that the universe was the only one until the battle of havoc is coming. 100,000 prehistoric times of chaos suddenly appeared in the edge of the universe with a big slap in the void. At the beginning, everyone didn't take the void crack as a thing, and it went on for a long time until a man with 3 heads and 6 arms crawled out of the void crack. This man claims to be the true queen from another universe. He is terrible and terrible. Obviously only the Supreme can cultivate, but he can slaughter the Supreme, and there is no room for a backhand. Even the half-step invincible Supreme is not his opponent. It is a celebration of heaven to be able to pick up a life in his hands. After this true queen came to the universe, he immediately launched a killing and brought a storm in the universe. Numerous races were annihilated by him, and countless powers died in his hands. For a moment, the entire universe was filled with sorrow and sorrow land of smoke. He could not use any words to describe the tragic universe at that time. After a pause, Bloodwave Supreme looked at Xiang Jianwushuang, sighed lightly and said, It is a pity that Jiedong, who was the first day of 100,000 chaos prehistoric times, also died in his hands. Falling down, I'm afraid that at this moment is already the ultimate power of the universe standing at the peak. Speaking of which, Bloodwave Supreme is a little bitterly sighing. Wu Jianwushuang heard that his pupil shrank, and the first master of the 100,000 pre-chaos prehistoric world, the previous master of the Wuchang Chaos Tripod, had fallen like this? Thought of this, Jian Wushuang could not help feeling a pity. At this time, Bloodwave Supreme continued to speak. At this time, we finally realized that there was another parallel universe beside our universe. And this universe, we call it virtual. Virtual? Jian Jianwa's eyes narrowed, and there was a flash of light in his eyes. The giant axe nodded and said in a deep voice, Yes, because their practice is completely different from ours, and they rely on an empty spirit, so we call them the virtual universe. The monks in the virtual universe, on the whole level, are better than us in the same realm. Therefore, they are also particularly difficult and difficult. Is that so? Jian Wushuang raised an eyebrow and thoughtfulness appeared in his eyes. Sword unparalleled. The battle of catastrophe was caused by this man called True King. At that time, he strangled the universe, and was finally noticed by the strongest in the universe. A total of 3 invincible supreme shots and suppressed him. However, Rao still allows this person to perform mystery, escape from serious injuries, and return to the virtual universe. In the universe, there is peace. And just after the 7 chaos era that this man escaped, the void crack that had been mended by power was torn again. Thousands of people in the virtual universe crawled out of the cracks. Our entire universe is suddenly caught in the boundless flames of war, and the entire universe is filled with fierce water. This battle is known as the War of Holocaust. Hearing here, Jian Wushuang finally understood. Just by imagination, he could imagine how terrible the catastrophe that swept the entire universe. What happened then? How was this battle calmed down? Jian Wushuang continued to ask. Su Shueb was supreme, heard the smile, raised his head to look at the sky, and a look of admiration flashed in his eyes. Later the Lord of the Gods rises among the tens of thousands of people, and Fu building immediately falls, turning the tide into a slump. The victory and defeat of this battle was established in one fell swoop. Under the leadership of Master God, this battle has finally been reversed. We defeated the monks in the universe. It is precisely because of this battle that the name of the first person in the universe was established. We call him the of the universe. Wu Jianwushuang heard the words and couldn't calm down for a long time. If you want to come to that era, it must be a time of epic generation, bright stars, and a magnificent epic era, right? Sun Shueb was supreme, saw a slight smile, took up Lingcha, and blew the rising heat of Lingcha and laughed. Sword warriors, the extraterrestrial battlefield you asked before is the product of this war. Wu Jian's thoughts flashed like electricity, and he instantly grasped several key points. Devour the Emperor. The virtual universe. The extraterrestrial battlefield. The of the universe and his own master Xuani. These characters, who seem to have nothing to do with each other, are invisible, with a faint line connecting them together. At the grand event of the universe, the of the universe told him that his master Xuani was his old friend, and was in the next big picture. So, what is the purpose of this overall situation? His master Xuani. What identity does he play in the overall situation? His sword is unparalleled. What is his identity? Wu Jianwushuang fell into silence, and his eyes kept thinking. He began to remember himself in Xuani, from the beginning to the present, thinking about the bits and pieces of Xuani. After a long time, Jian Wushuang took a long sigh, with countless confused colors in his eyes, looked up at woody starry sky, and shook his head. Master, what do you want? Blood Supreme and Great Axe noticed this scene, and looked at each other and said, What is wrong with you? Nothing. Jian Wushuang turned his head and smiled at them. After a short while, Supreme Bloodwave and Great Axe Supreme left. Wu Jinsho sat alone at the bow of the awning boat, frowning into a long thought. Fu Jun, the cold, frosty figure, appeared on the back of Jian Wushuang, stretched out his slim hand, and gently smoothed the word Chuan wrinkled between Jian Wushuang's eyebrows. What's wrong? Is there something bothering you? You can talk to your body. Maybe you will have an idea. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and shook his head and smiled. Shuanger, I'm fine, don't worry about me. After finishing talking, Jian Wushuang extended his finger and gently scratched on the frosty nose bridge, stood up, and shot into the manor. He had a hunch. Maybe it won't be long before the universe will be chaotic again. Before that, the only thing he could do was to improve his strength. As long as the strength is achieved, whatever the virtual universe is, it is better to eat the organization, or a chess game played by Master Zuanshuan. When the soldiers come to cover the water and cover the soil, only strength is the foundation of standing in this world. Wu Jian stepped into the practice room and opened a long retreat. For him, it is not difficult to break through the medium supreme, Just need to push the boat down the water and continue to condense the power. After he broke through the middle extreme, his strength will reach a qualitative leap. In an instant 3,000 years have passed. In these 3,000 years, Jian Wuxia has continually condensed his strength and cultivated steadily, finally pushing the elementary supreme realm to the top. Chapter 44-41. Why did the order of Lord Elder God reach the Temple of Life at this time? Wu Jian's brows frowned, but from the tone of the Bloodwave Supreme, he could hear the emergency. As a result, Jian Wuxia did not delay, and flickered into the manor. He came to the Supreme Temple, where there was a solemnity. The Supreme Bloodwave Supreme and the Great Axe Supreme stood respectfully and acted like a bow. In the first hall of the hall, a young boy with red lips and white teeth was standing with a roll of edict. This person is one of the disciples under the seat of the Colossus, Lan Su. Jian Wuxia, I've seen Lord Lan Su. Jian Wuxia glanced at Shuebo Supreme and others, then bowed slightly. Xingli said, Warriors Supreme, no need to be polite. Wu Lanci smiled kindly at Jian Wuxia. He was quite polite to Jian Wuxia, who was about to become a brother-in-law with him at the cosmic race. Wu Jianwuxuang nodded, and then asked, Master Lan Su, you have spared no effort this time to come to the Temple of Life. What's the matter? Tong Lanci replied, This time when we come to the Temple of Life, we really need to discuss things. Speaking of this, Lan Su paused, with a look of solitude on his face, looked around the hall, and solemnly said, There is a riot in the extraterritorial battlefield. As soon as he said this, the audience was shocked. What? The extraterrestrial battlefield is rioting? Isn't the extraterrestrial battlefield suppressed by the Lord God of God himself? How could a riot occur? The virtual universe has been peaceful with us for tens of thousands of chaos periods. How could this happen suddenly? What's the situation over there? Are people from the virtual universe coming soon? Didn't it happen, and we will start the war again? Everyone was disappointed, even the Supreme of Bloodwave, and so on. Their faces changed slightly. Looking at this scene, Lan Su's face eased a little, and he shook his head and said, You don't need to be so nervous. The situation is not serious enough. There is my master sitting in the outfield battlefield, and there is no wave in a short time. Hearing this, everyone just breathed a long sigh of relief. Wu Jianxuang frowned and asked, Master Lan Su, why did you come to the Temple of Life this time? Lan Su glanced at Jian Wuxia and smiled back. This is the case. This time, the extraterrestrial battlefield riots. A large number of virtual cosmic virtuosos have come out in a row. And the Lord God cannot do everything himself, but only by virtue of the supremacy of the extraterritorial battlefield is no longer enough to suppress this riot. It is too strenuous. Then Master God of the Gods asked me to deploy manpower in the universe. Everyone who has the supreme power in the martial arts must send at least one supreme power to the extraterritorial battlefield to suppress the riots. There are 2 places in the Temple of Life for the battle. That is, your palace must send 2 strong men in the supreme realm to the extraterritorial battlefield. As soon as this remark came to an end, everyone in the Temple of Life looked at each other face to face, and there was no sound for a while. Wu Lanci is not in a hurry to ask for an answer now. Sheng said, This matter is related to the safety of the universe. I also ask you to set aside life and death, and help the gods of the universe to end this riot. Well, now I have to go to the Dragon Clan, and I have to inform the major forces, so I will take a step. 10 years later, I will wait for you at the ferry in Xianyang Starfield, and rush to the extraterritorial battlefield together through the cosmic passage. After I finished speaking, Lan Su didn't stay much, so she strode away. I can see that this time, although not so serious, it is urgent. After Lan Su left, everyone in the Supreme Temple frowned and didn't speak. Don't say that Lord Elder God has issued an order in person. Even if Lord Elder God has not issued an order, they will definitely go to the extraterritorial battlefield. As Lan Su said, this matter is related to the security of the entire universe. Once the riots in the extraterrestrial battlefields cannot be suppressed, a large number of virtual cosmic virtuosos flood into the universe, and then they will cover their nests. And will they be finished? The two supremes of this faction went to the extraterritorial battlefield, but it became a problem. Now the supreme governance, the Palace of Life, is awaiting revival, and it lacks the pillars. If something happens to the people sent to it, the Palace of Life may be completely shattered like a collapsed dike. After a short while, the Bloodwave Supreme groaned and said, "The battlefield outside the territory is extremely dangerous and murderous. If the ordinary Supreme went forward, I would be afraid of 9 lives, which is too dangerous." He froze. It seems that Sun Shuebwa Supreme has made a decision and said, "So, this time, the 2 people who went to the extraterrestrial battlefield will go to me and Tian Sun Supreme, and the giant axe will be responsible for guarding the Palace of Life." As soon as this remark came to an end, the Tentacle Supreme next to him nodded. Both of them are top-level Supreme practices. Even if they meet the half-step Invincible Supreme, they have the power of a battle, and the 2 have been fighting side by side for many years. Then they can support each other on the battlefield and have a care. Regarding this, the giant axe has no objection. He has not recovered from the injury, and he can recover the injury while sitting in the Palace of Life. I decided that this decision was about to take effect when the Supreme of the Blood Waves and the Supreme of the Heavens decided to pack up and go to Xianyang Starfield Ferry. Qi Jian Wushuang and Jiu Jia Wang stepped forward with a tacit understanding, with the same voice. "My sword is unparalleled / I am the king of 9 robberies. And I went to the extraterrestrial battlefield to fight for the Temple of Life." As soon as this remark came to an end, everyone in the audience was surprised. Sun Shuebwa Supreme laughed absurdly. "You 2 have a tacit understanding." Jian Wushuang and Jiu Jia Wang also couldn't help looking at each other, and their eyes flashed with surprise. Wu Jinsho shook his head and converged his thoughts. Extreme blood, this extraterrestrial battlefield. Even if Lord Lan Su is not here today, I am ready to go. Oh! Blood Wave Supreme heard his words, narrowed his eyes. As early as when Jian Wushuang asked him about the battlefield of the outer world and the fall of Tai Luo Supreme, he had some conjectures in his mind, just because Jian Wushuang had something to do with this virtual universe person. However, the sword's unique talent is the ultimate hope for the future rise of the Temple of Life.